Welcome to the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee agenda for Monday, May 1st, 2017. We do have some significant items to deal with today and some significant consent items. Do I have a mover for the consent items? Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I'll move them.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I have no questions on these ones unless somebody else does.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, just quickly, I had a question for item number 1. I don't know if you need a motion to bring out the consent items or.
Okay. Do we have any others who want to have questions? Okay. With that, we'll vote on items 2 to 10, and then we'll go on item 1, Councillor Singh, and we'll vote on that to pull out a discussion. Okay. All those in favor is from 2 to 10. Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Singh to move out of consent items, item 1. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, hi, Gloria. So obviously this is something that's ongoing, annual, and there still continues to be some challenges with the noise related to the backing, the properties that abut on the other side, along Williamsburg neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Will there be some communication with the events planner, letting them know that this continues to be an ongoing issue, and if they could be sensitive, not only to the noise, but I know it's a noise exemption for this consent you guys are asking for, but there's also garbage issues after the event. So I want to take the advantage to bring that to your attention. There's a lot of debris that's left after the event along the fence in the rear of the property. So I wanted to bring those two issues to your attention, and hopefully you can communicate those concerns as well. So,
through the chair, yes. So the practice that we've been doing with the church for the last couple of years in terms of notifying the nearby residents and putting flyers on their doors has really brought down the level of complaints we've received. Yeah. I will certainly mention to them in regards to the garbage and ensure that that's a priority for them as well.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, just on that one as well. Parking always seems to be an issue that I hear about just because it's all along Fisher-Hallman Road. Now, we have the double lane there now. I anticipate that parking is going to be a bigger concern this year because the road widening that's occurred. I just wanted to mention it's always something I hear about every year that these happen. So I guess I just wanted to bring it to your attention, see if there's anything we can do proactively or just enforce on the day. On the days of the events.
Through the chair, I will also work with the representative from the church and just speak with them and let them know that those concerns have come forward, and then we'll put something in place.
Well, we do have one more question for you, Ms. McNeil. Mayor Verbanovic. You clicked yourself out.
Sorry, and I apologize because I was out of the room. Did you move number 8 out of consent?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No, sorry. No, we didn't.
You didn't?
We moved all the items. Only item 1 was moved out of consent.
Okay. Can we add number 8 to that, Mr. Chair? Because I have some questions on that.
So do you want us to re-vote on that one?
If we could, please.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll do that.
Well, I don't know that we necessarily need to vote on it. I just want to
ask questions.
Yeah, I just want to express some concerns on it.
Okay, we'll vote on that. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, you can ask your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And so it's with respect to the Highway 8 resurfacing. And I heard from a resident in Councillor Schneider's ward on the weekend, which was the ward that I used to represent previously. And the last time we had work done on that stretch, they encountered some significant issues. Mr. Carmichael would certainly remember those. And the resident was concerned that quite frankly, the province wasn't always the most responsive because they simply referred it to their construction company, who was the one dealing with things. And so they've asked that that there be a provincial contact in order to deal with problems when they do come up, and that there be better notification of the residents, because it was troublesome for them, and they're a single house living alongside the highway, and well, you know, I get from a construction point of view, it may not be a big deal because you only see, you know, one resident being impacted, but for someone who is impacted, needs to continue with life and sleep and work and so on, it does become problematic. And this is a property on Hofstadter. Yeah. So I don't know if Mr. Carmichael wants to comment.
Yes, thank you. Through you, the chair. I'm very familiar with the challenge that we dealt with a number of years ago. Obviously, with the highway operations, the ministry feels very strongly about doing these paving operations during off-peak hours, not to disrupt the main traffic flow during the day. Having said that, it's probably important to note that the impacts of this work, it's just a resurfacing of the existing highway, that the impacts will be felt at most, I would suggest, one night at each location as they move through and get all the paving done. So the impact will be significantly less than the last challenge we dealt with, but I will endeavor to get that contact information and sent through the resident notification.
And one of the other suggestions that the resident had, and I don't know if this is viable, was that perhaps they look at alternate nights, you know, in terms of actually working in that area, so that, you know, potentially if you are being impacted from a sleep perspective, it only happens every second night. So maybe that's something you can talk with them about.
Thank you, I will do so.
Mr. Mayor, do you have questions on number 1? That's all?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We'll vote on item number 1. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we will now go into our discussion items, and it's finally here today, the Kitchener Fire Department Master Plan for 2017-2022. I'm pretty sure staff have been, you know, well versed and prepared for this, since this item was going to be here a few times before, but had to be delayed or deferred. We are going to have a 10-minute presentation, and I'm not sure which one is it, you, Chief Rehild? So it's going to be a 10-minute presentation. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. On behalf of Deputy Martin, Deputy Gilmore, Demetri Resendez, and Steve Larochelle, it's a pleasure to be able to present to you today on the master plan. The plan was developed as a strategic blueprint to guide the department forward over the next 5 years. And as you can see within the plan, there's been a strong focus on emergency response and fire protective services. And we truly believe as a management team that once the 11 strategic and 24 operational actions are implemented, we'll be able to enhance service delivery to the community. The project team consisted of 21 members. We had representation from the Kitchener Fire Department, as well as from our colleagues from City Hall, from the finance, IT, HR, building, planning, and purchasing departments. In March, Council had an opportunity to meet Pete Lennox, who participated as a citizen rep on the project team, but we also had 3 other community members serve on the team, 2 from the Waterloo Regional District School Board and 1 gentleman from our long-term care community. I'd also like to take this opportunity today to thank Kathleen Woodcock for her assistance and dedication as our project manager. Kathleen was instrumental in shaping the master fire plan, so thank you very much. The project team met for 6 months. The plan took over a year to build. The Master Fire Plan was developed by utilizing the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office framework. Essentially, the OFM provides a pathway for municipal fire departments to follow to develop these plans. Firstly, the project team met to conduct a comprehensive review of the 10 divisions, which included examining their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, as well as identifying challenges that each division faced. Additionally, the project team reviewed how the divisions were aligned within the current organizational structure. We viewed the responsibilities of and divisions, as well as their activities, assess their current workspace, the records management systems that they utilize, and the IT systems that are in place. From there, a succinct summary was provided for each division, as well as action items were formalized to strengthen the divisions moving forward. Additionally, the project team reviewed and analyzed the Dillon consulting response data, as well as we heard back from over 200 customers through the Engage Kitchener survey platform. Fire management also looked at cost recovery and revenue generation opportunities throughout building of the plan to try and offset fire's bottom line. As the master fire plan was being developed, 2 other strategic pieces of work were being developed in 2016. One was our fire IT strategy, which is located in Volume 1 of the Master Fire Plan, and the other was the 5-year Corporate Emergency Management and Business Continuity Program. Components of that are highlighted in Volume 1 of the plan. The next slide was created to illustrate that building the plan was a balancing act. As a result of the inherent risks of our occupation, the project team leaned on fire service legislation, regulation, safety standards to ensure that we could move the key pieces of the plan forward with regards to all the stuff linked to health and safety of the firefighter. Additionally, on the other side of the scale, the city is growing in population and our building stock is also on the rise, which has led to more emergency responses. And as a management team, we know we're limited with regards to budget and cost. We know that there isn't a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and we want to be good corporate partners as well. However, with all these moving parts and internal, external pressures, we're very proud of the product that is in front of you here today. And we strongly believe that once these strategic and operational actions are implemented, the department and community will be in a far better position from a fire safety and emergency response perspective. The next part of the presentation focuses on the strategic and operational actions. The 11 strategic actions were embedded into the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office 3 lines of defense model. Essentially, the ministry wants municipal fire departments to manage fire risks through public fire safety education, fire safety standards and enforcement, and emergency response. The 24 operational actions were framed around 3 focus areas that fire management believes is essential in moving a modern-day fire department forward, and that is through being efficient and effective, staff development opportunities, as well as strengthening partnerships along the way. Because of time constraints, I can't go over each of the action items. However, we wanted to give council an example from each of the category. Under the first line of defense, public safety education, the goal is to implement the After the Fire is Out program. The plan moving forward is to have in-service suppression crews after a significant fire reach out to the residents on the streets that were impacted and make sure that our citizens feel safe and secure in their homes from a fire safety perspective. We believe this new initiative fits well within the neighborhood strategy around being more visible and present as a department. Under the second line of defense, fire safety standards enforcement, the goal is to have our suppression staff assist the fire prevention division by having in-service crews conduct fire inspections. Fire management believes this approach will offset some of the workload capacities the fire prevention division is experiencing because of the demands they face on a daily basis from the public regarding request and complaint inspections. Under the third line of defense, emergency response, the goal here is to create opportunities where our suppression staff can build on their skill sets through mock scenarios designed to test their strategies and tactics in more complex occupancies like industrial buildings and or vulnerable occupancy settings, really to enhance their operational knowledge. Under the category being efficient and effective, as you can see within Volume 2, within the Master Fire Plan, there are a number of technology solutions, once implemented, that we believe will make the organization far more streamlined. Many of the current processes and systems are antiquated, and they need to be changed so that we can continuously improve as an organization. Under the category staff development, the management team is committed to developing an in-house officer development program. The program is designed to strengthen our supervisory ranks by providing staff educational opportunities to be more effective in their role. The management team is also committed to building succession planning opportunities for our supervisors so that they have the needed skills to take on future leadership positions. Under strengthening partnerships, I've spent 25 years in the fire service now and close to 15 years in emergency management. And I can tell you, it is paramount to have strong working relationships with all levels of government if you truly want to build disaster-resilient communities. The goal moving forward is to increase emergency preparedness training in our community to ensure our citizens are better prepared in the event there's a large-scale emergency or disaster. Under financial implications, we're happy to highlight that these strategic and operational actions will be completed within existing budgets. A number of our technology solutions will be advanced because of DC funding that was allotted to our department in 2015. Additionally, as I stated before, management is trying to offset fire's bottom line with potential cost recovery and revenue generation opportunities. As well, the goal is to train suppression staff to assist fire prevention in some of their required duties. In closing, I'd like to highlight that fire management believes the department is in a great position from a cultural perspective to advance these strategic and operational actions. We have a very dynamic and dedicated team, and I know this team will move these actions forward, which will ultimately lead to an enhanced service delivery model to our community. So thank you. So before anyone wants to ask any questions, I'd just like to highlight some of the portfolios that the management team is involved with. So Deputy Martin, he's responsible for 2 suppression platoons as well as the training division. Deputy Gilmore is responsible for 2 suppression platoons as well as the apparatus and equipment division. Demetria Resendez is responsible for the administration division, direct detect, IT, and emergency communications. And Steve Larochelle is responsible for corporate emergency management and business continuity, as well as the public education division. So we're happy to take any of the questions that you have now.
Chief, you're welcome to have a seat if you want.
Yeah, I'm going to sit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you may be up there for a while. Okay, we do have some questions. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me just start off with saying that the fire department makes up a significant, part of what this municipality does with its tax base. And to be looking at a body of work such as this, a master plan for a department the size of yours, the fact that it shows that there will be no financial impact, it blows me away. And I think that credit and congratulations goes to you, yourself, Chief, and to your senior management team as well. So that's I think, a significant achievement on its own in ensuring that we also move forward in providing better protection to our citizens. Some of the key things that really jumped out to me, and I want a little bit more clarification, it's an opportunity for us to re-go over some of the stuff that's already outlined in the booklet. I noticed on the public education part of it, kind of a better plan in addressing the diverse population and growing diversity within our community, where there are language barriers, but we have to get across that, ensuring that our residents are well educated in knowing that they do the right things, take the right precautions for fire safety. What type of engagement or communication plan do you have in mind?
Okay, I was going to leave the mics on for all of you because I don't know who's going to address what questions in particular. So if you don't mind just keeping your mics on. That way I don't have to click and... Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, in regards to for the public education, especially as new arrivals to this community, as well as we have the English as a second language program, so we do have staff that go to those programs on a regular basis. And we also include the fire trailer, the kitchen fire trailer demonstrations and a lot of the community events that we have throughout the city as well. So we try to include everything around like proper cooking facilities and in the actual homes and apartments and so on. So we've done that piece of it. So we really do concentrate on the whole English as a second language as part of that education.
So that speaks to those that are already partaking in a particular program as an outreach. Has there ever been any consideration in looking at, I'm sure we have basic literature that speaks to fire safety and having it in different languages, the predominant ones that we know that there's a larger body of a demographic that speak that secondary language. so that that can be distributed in areas that maybe that population base is more concentrated in. I'm referencing something as an example in my ward itself, in the Chandler Mowat neighborhood, not too far from the headquarters. There's a multitude of former nationalities that they define to a certain language that they feel more comfortable speaking, conversing, and reading, writing in. But they are also the risk group that we want to ensure that they know their rights as to what the landlords, how they should be maintaining their buildings, and what they need to do themselves in their units and their households.
Right. Through the chair, one thing I'd like to highlight is that when our new Syrian Canadians came into our community, we actually worked with translators to get the fire and life safety message to this population. We're also looking at new strategies through technology, through our website, to better message those groups. So I would say that moving forward, we could do a lot better in this area. The majority of our programs, you're correct, are in English, and that's something that we definitely take as something we can work on moving forward.
Well, we do have technology at our advantage, and as we build out our websites, we can look at that translation software, whatever some of that content can be translated out. It's only to bring to your notice, and I'm glad to see that this is forefront of the strategy, but we have to take advantage of whatever tech or whatever resources we have available to us. The other question, and this really speaks to my interest as well, in efficiencies, and I think the entire document talks about efficiencies, and that's what the restructuring tries to achieve, and as well as revenue generation. You don't see a lot of that. That's not an expectation that you go into opening up the document thinking, wait a minute, that's what they're proposing. But I'm so glad that you guys are. So one of the things that you referenced was direct detect. So pushing out to other municipalities. Have we done all that we can within our own municipality in ensuring that there's more widespread adaptation, as well as perhaps talking to the CBO's office and saying, how can the building code require new homes to have direct detect as well?
I'll answer this.
Or at least the rough-in built in a way that the resident can
Chief,
take it easily.
Can you raise your mic a little closer to your...
Sorry about that. So through the chair, I would say one of the biggest takeaways for me going through the master fire plan was that our direct attack product really isn't marketed properly. We have 65,000 residential addresses, and our direct attack customer base is around 3,500. So there's no question about it. I think we need to drive this market. After the master fire plan is approved, one of the strategic actions is actually to do a business plan. We reached out to Wilfrid Laurier University, their MBA program, to really give us a head start on how to better market the product and better help us with the business side of direct attack.
So market internally within our city as well first.
Yes. So the first focus would be on our own city. I mean, as I said, 3,500 customers. We haven't seen significant growth in many years. So I think it comes down to a resource issue, but also bringing in people that can specialize to assist the fire department. We really see this as a possible revenue generator, but we just have not had the time as a new management team to move this product forward. But it's in our eyesight to really advance this product. With your question with regards to the Ontario Building Code or going through the building department, that's an Ontario Building Code, so it would have to be a provincial change.
But is there advocacy that's going to perhaps happen, or would you take advantage of that?
I personally don't think we could make legislative changes with regards to our direct attack product. That would just benefit our own municipality. But the goal also, too, through hopefully expanding our contracts and dispatch, is that we're going to be able to dispatch for more municipalities. Hence, we're going to be able to put more direct attack products in their home as well.
And we can't do it internally, like ourselves, through any particular bylaw? Have we considered that or looked at it?
Well, we do, through the chair, we do have a bylaw right now in place, so we have required areas and non-required areas. But I really think if we're going to move this product, it's through better marketing, right, and making people more self-aware of the benefits of direct attack. And I truly believe, once again, we haven't really focused on this product as a fire department the way we should have.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about revenue generation as well. Seeing some of the training programs that you offer, as well as other things that you're doing like Direct Detect. Can you give us a few examples of ways that you are going to look for more revenue generation outside of Direct Detect?
So through the chair, we have embarked on a new strategy in terms of training. So our individual skill sets are increasing. And with that new skill set, we have the opportunity to train other departments. So as we're trying to raise the bar for our own people, we can then invite others to come on board. And that would be like a Kitchener Fire Department Learning Academy or something to that effect.
And then outside of the training programs and Direct Detect, what are some other ways that you're thinking? Obviously, more will probably come out of the business planning process, but to generate revenue.
I think the third strategy is around our communication center, our dispatching center. We believe that there's a market for us to reach out to so that we can dispatch for other communities. So those are the three big ones: Direct Detect, our training platform, as well as our communication center.
Okay. I just wanted to say that this is a great master plan, and there's a lot of great action items. What is the plan other than the business planning process for follow-up, or is that the only follow-up that we will see? Because I don't want to lose momentum on this. So what's the plan kind of moving forward?
Through the chair, so the goal for fire management over the next 8 weeks is to present this master fire plan to our team. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to reach out to our senior leadership team, hold a retreat so we can start moving on these action items. And the end goal really is on a yearly basis that I would give you a report card on how we're doing with regards to these action items.
That sounds great. Councillor or Chair Ioannidis, I'm more than happy to move this recommendation. And just a quick comment, I think, as I said, there's great action items in here, and I don't want to lose momentum on them because I think there's a lot of really tangible things that can happen, and I really appreciate all your work on this.
Okay, it's been noted.
Excuse me, through the chair, I forgot to add one thing that I think is important. If you look at page 81 and 82, where the strategic and operational actions are, we've already advanced, or are in the process of advancing these strategic and operational actions. So even though we're waiting for full approval, there's many things that we've done over the last year with the management team to really expedite the initiation phase.
Great, thank you.
And since Councillor Galloway, Seelock, and Councillor Singh touched upon the revenue generation issue, I'm just going to add one quick question in there. Is there a certain amount of skill sets that our staff are going to be able to obtain that other communities are going to be able to use, that they will be using our services and able to generate revenue?
All right, so do you want to speak to the...
Through the chair, are you asking whether we will have skill sets that we can offer, so services that we can offer to other departments?
Yeah, like
other municipalities?
Yeah, like particular diving. I don't know what exactly, but...
Yeah, we're training to a technical rescue standard that will provide skill sets that we can offer to other municipalities.
Okay, that's perfect. Great.
Yes.
Our next question up by Mayor Verbanovic. You turn yourself off? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me begin by thanking the group of you as well for an incredible piece of work. I think it was Councillor Singh who referred to it as a booklet. I'll almost refer to it as an encyclopedia, judged by its thickness. And I think the reality is that that's a good thing, because there's a lot of excellent information in there, and in particular, I really want to comment on the approach that you took in terms of developing this, and the fact that there was public consultation involved. You included community reps in the process, and as others have noted, the focus on the utilization of existing resources and existing staff. And to see a new guiding document, a master plan such as this, come out without asking for additional resources is something that I think you all deserve to be applauded for. You know, without a doubt, it's always a challenge to do more without more money or more people. But I think the fact that you're looking at ways of engaging staff, as I read it, more in areas like fire education and so on, and not just suppression, I think will go a long way in terms of achieving those goals. Lastly, on the direct detect and dispatch, you certainly have made some strong inroads there. On the dispatch piece in particular, is this something that you think a number of municipalities might potentially, like right now we dispatch for Waterloo and a couple of the townships?
The 3 townships north of the 401.
Okay. And so do we think that there's an appetite there, whether within the region or beyond the region, for others to potentially look at collaborating with us?
Through the chair, we're exploring a number of opportunities with municipalities outside the region at this time.
Okay. And I guess, and I'm not sure, but does the fact that we're region-wide moving towards this new radio system, is that part of what actually makes this even more viable?
Through the chair, that's correct. So we have 2 strategic projects taking shape right now. One is the new computer-aided dispatch platform, as well as the new voice radio infrastructure for the region. So both these 2 initiatives will advance what we're trying to do with regards to increasing our dispatching contracts. Okay.
Well, that's the only question I had, and like I said, I just wanted to express my thanks for the great job that you collectively did on this project.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, Councilor Marsh.
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered already. First, I just want to add my congratulations to the leadership team on a terrific report. It's comprehensive, it's well written, and it's going to be really good to streamline all of these aspects of the fire department. One question I do have is just about one of the initiatives that perhaps has already been started, as you mentioned, or I'm not sure, but it's just mentioned on page 82 briefly, number 9, about increasing the awareness of existing and encouraging the development of new programs. So, for example, the Young Female Firefighting Program. Can one of you please highlight some of the aspects of that program?
Through the chair, we've been looking at, there are a number of programs that we would like to initiate. One of them is a young female firefighter program. What we had done in the past is that we had 1 day per year. And we invited people who have gone through, or girls that have gone through the college programs, or girls who had an interest in it. What we've embarked on now is to do 1 day a month. And that's, again, just the beginnings of the program, but it's a huge success at this point. We put it out through the community, through different venues, and there are about 20 people that have taken part, 20 girls that have joined in at all various levels of, like some of them are in high school, some of them they're in the program, the college program, some are completed. So that's the stage that it's at right now.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Okay. I sent the chief a couple of pages of questions and still have a couple more pages. So I'm going to go through my questions slowly. If I run out of time, then I'll come back and chime in. So the one thing that I noticed right off the bat with this document was the focus on communication and education, because I think you're right. When you looked at the survey and you look at the comments that come in from the public that we as councillors may receive, I don't think the public understands the level of what you guys do. And so there's some ideas in here. Are there other ideas of what you're going to be doing? And I know you and I have talked about being out in public at public events. And certainly you've definitely stepped that up. But are there other ideas that you're thinking about doing?
Through the chair, at this time, I can't think of any new strategies. However, we are working with corporate communications right now and creating a different website. I'm going to ask Steve really to speak to what we're doing with the website. I'll probably get the terminology wrong. I'll turn off right now.
Thanks, Chief. Through the chair, we're working right now on a new landing page for the corporate website, and we'll be launching that. We're updating the information right now, and a couple key areas we've already updated, like fireworks and how do you deal with fireworks, and also around fire pits as well, like burning. We're looking at trying to be a little bit more interactive as we move in to kind of more like community events, even with the concept of the neighborhood strategy is really getting into the community and having more kind of interactive aspects of it, like the links to our website. So as people can go in, they can actually identify some of the key things they can do around everything from like CO, even fire alarms, those kind of things, what they're supposed to do. So that's where we want to move in, is much more the social media side of it. So we're working closely with corporate communications on how we can move that.
I think that's important because I do believe, during budget time we have Ask a Professional. It would be kind of cool for people to be able to ask a firefighter on. One piece of information that sticks in my mind and always will stick in my mind is the flashover time for new houses versus old houses, for houses that are filled to the rafters with, no disrespect to IKEA. And we know that products today are made with much more highly flammable materials. So just to go forward with that, we're going to be taking, we definitely have the schools coming out, to the Safety Village. And are we considering going into the schools? Are we already into the schools? And I think we have to do something about the public's idea of firefighters. We need to change some of that reputation that firefighters are driving around in their trucks getting food supplies at Zayres, or similar to we had an event not that long ago where the Chief Larkin was there, and one of the questions was how many times does Chief Larkin stop for donuts? We need to change that whole ideology and that reputation, right? Have you thought about that?
Through the chair, I think in the community we have a very strong reputation. I would suggest that our community sees us doing an effective job with regards to emergency response. Mm-hmm. I know over the last 2 years, as a chief, we've really pushed the public education community engagement piece. So I think we have a strong reputation. With regards to going into the grocery stores or Tim Hortons, my feeling is this. As I said, I've asked the firefighters to really step it up with regards to neighborhood engagement. So I'm comfortable that they're going into, say, a grocery store to pick up lunch or Tim Hortons. The message that I said to all of the crews is that, listen, if you're going into these locations, make sure you're educating along the way. Make sure you're reaching out to the child or reach out to the family members in those locations, and really try to stress fire and life safety messaging and making them aware. Right? So that's kind of the strategy that management supports here.
So one of the other questions I want to ask is probably going to have a bit longer of a response, is in terms of the community risk profile. So as you've already identified, as our community expands, we need to be more proactive than reactive. I'm concerned about the level of cost that structure fire are for property damage. Can we do something in terms of educating the public that structure fire or the property loss, and you guys are great when you send out the information to us, there's been a structure fire, this is roughly the cost of damages. Do we want to be educating the public on the structure property loss in terms of the fire, or is there water damage, and sometimes we do that as well? Should that be out in the public more than just maybe council or whoever you're sending those that information pieces to?
Yes, through the chair, I don't think I want to share that message with our community. I think we focus on the first two lines of defense, fire, life safety, education, making sure that they're aware of the fire safety standards that they need in their homes, right? And then we also, through our fire prevention initiatives, really try to follow up with any code compliance issues. So I like to keep with that format.
Okay. My time is up, but I'll bring back in.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. Again, I want to just echo all the positive comments that have already been said. I want to touch a little bit on your community work. Something that is very helpful in my community is the Centerville Outreach Program for summer, the COPS program, which Mayor Bravanovic was very instrumental in getting started. This program started out as just a summer program, and due to the great work that your team do volunteering in this, it's expanded. Can you maybe just update? I know there's been a little bit of reorganizing in the program, so just update us on where the COPS program is standing.
Through the chair. So the COPS program itself, we've reorganized it a little bit. We have 2 of our dispatchers that have actually joined in as well, helping out with that. And we do have a group, a committee that meets on a regular basis just around the planning. So all the summer events and the camps that we have for this summer have all been planned out. Again, the actual camp itself, the overnight camp that we have at Silver Lake, has also been organized, and we have a banquet that finishes September 6th as well, and we usually do that. So there's been a lot of work that's been going into that whole process. And we've been working very closely with our community services department, the folks from community services, and they've been helping out quite a bit around organizing that as well. So it's expanding and it's better organized as we move forward.
Yeah, to me it's very exciting that this is expanded just from a summer program to now a winter program, and from Centerville Chicopee out to other community centers as well. So I just wanted to thank you for all that hard work and all that volunteer work and the mentorship that goes on and the relationships that are built. I did want to point out with the community involvement as well. It's not in your report, but I'm very grateful for your attendance at community events like the Bike Safety Rodeo at the Stanley Park Community Center. You've appeared so many times there, and the opportunities to educate adults. And I know I've heard questions about what's the best smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector to get. So there's a great opportunity to talk to the parents, let the kids crawl in the equipment. They just love that. So I know that didn't show up in here, but I think it's very valuable. I wanted to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, you want to make another comment?
No, it's not a comment, actually. I think Mayor Bravanovic misunderstood as I was saying something. I wanted to make sure our fire people didn't have the same misunderstanding. I didn't reference the booklet. I was talking about the education material and saying that are there any booklets that could be maybe translated in different languages. I wasn't referencing the full encyclopedia as a booklet either. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't misunderstand the same comments. That's all. Just clarification.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
Thank you. I think everything's been answered, but I just have a few small questions. Can you tell me how much time was put into preparing this strategy?
Yes, through the chair, total staff time, 739 hours. I did an Excel spreadsheet all the way through.
Now, does that include all your time on this project too?
Through the chair, no, it doesn't.
Oh, and what was your time?
I did this, I would consider this like as a part-time project. Outside of work hours, I have over 300 hours into the document through 2016.
On top of the staff time? If I were to ask you what was the cost of this project, I gather that I know your time, which is a lot, and all the staff time was part of your work process. But if I were to ask you what was the cost of doing this strategy, what would it be? And what?
Through the chair, I could actually figure out the true costs of the master fire plan, but I would say it would be roughly in the neighborhood of $70,000 worth of staff time.
Does that include your 300 hours?
Yes. Sorry, through the chair, yes.
Yeah, and so that was all done in-house?
Through the chair, the 2 pieces that were done through the consultant was the community risk profile and the station location and response data report. We didn't have the technology to be able to generate the response and station location report.
Yeah. That's good. There's so many interesting and good points in the report. I just want to zero in on recommendation 34, which deals with suppression staff doing some visiting while and thereby saving others time. Do we, in the past, I can remember when a member of the fire department would visit homes and walk through them and give advice. Do we still do that?
Through the chair, that's correct. We still have a home fire safety program. It's actually a legislated program through the Fire Prevention Protection Act. We must have a home fire safety program.
So this would assist in that program?
Through the chair, this is a distinct and separate program.
The other part that found very interesting was the percentage of calls that are for medical purposes. Where do we stand? And to me, it's something that should be the same person doing both. Are we anywhere near combining those two projects, or is that?
I'll let Deputy Gilmore answer that one.
Is that a fair question?
Through the chair, one of the things our paramedic services do is they provide life support at an advanced level. And currently our fire department staff are trained to what they call a BTLS, which is a basic life and trauma support. Our regional paramedics cannot be at the advanced level care without first basic life support being provided. And some of that basic life support has to be done in a timely fashion, and don't quote me on this, but I want to say you have to have CPR or defibrillation in process in under 4 minutes of call time. Otherwise, all the advanced life support care will be non-effective. So that's why it's sort of two-tiered now based on our availability and our station locations throughout the city. We can generally meet that 4-minute time frame where our regional paramedic partners cannot.
Can this work under a one-tier system?
Through the chair, that's above my pay grade.
Okay, all right. I'll leave it at that. Just one quick question on the Young Females Program. This is a program to try to entice females into the service. It's not a question of changing the level playing field, I would hope. I know we had a big issue about this a number of years ago.
So through the chair, I think what it's trying to address is some of the cultural norms that are existing in society right now. It's not abnormal for a 5 or 6 year old young boy to want to be a fireman. Everybody asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a fireman? That dialogue does not happen for girls, so we want to make sure that the opportunities are given to them at the same level that it's given to the men and the boys.
Good thing. One final quick question. I've always been involved with the Direct Detect personally in my residence. I think it's a great system. I'm just curious as to do we have any idea what it would cost to put everybody in our community on that system? Do we ever thought about that, or do we have any idea of what the cost might be? I can leave that with you because
through the chair, we haven't done that calculation yet. But what I can tell you is we have over 60,000 residential homes, and we aren't really pushing the Direct Detect product forward as best as we can, I believe, from a fire service perspective. So as I said earlier, the goal is really try to improve on that.
Thank you.
I think you've kind of touched upon it in earlier with the revenue generation and all that and new technology, that you didn't have the time to look at this, but eventually you're going to be looking at this. So I think that's a good direction to be heading. Councillor Davey. You didn't get clicked in.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. I'll have comment as well. I'm going to keep it to questions at the moment. My questions are again on the Direct Detect system as well. I've noticed a bunch of different types of monitoring on page, I guess, 27 earlier in the report. And one of the concerns I get from residents, and I say this knowing that they knew full well when they bought into a subdivision that required direct detect, that's on them because they knew going in. But still, I get concerns that residents that in today's day and age, they don't even need a residential home phone line. They have their cell phones that they're required to pay, I guess, that dry loop cost of having that. So my question, although it's not explicit in here, is are we, as part of the action item, are we going to be looking at new technologies to possibly reduce the need for that higher cost system?
Through the chair, I would say there are other options, and so if residents do want to consider some of those options, I ask that they contact us and we can provide the costs associated with like an internet connection or something else.
Okay, so there are, because I was unclear whether it was a redundancy type thing that's part of the bylaw, but there are other options currently, or we're going to be looking at other options in the future?
Through the chair, I believe there is like internet connection options. There's a connection through another AES line of communication as well. So there are a few different options for individuals who don't want to maintain their main line, phone line. So as I mentioned earlier, I do encourage anyone who's interested to please contact us so we can share that information and provide all the costs associated with that and have them consider their options so they don't need to maintain their residential line.
Excellent, very good, thank you. I'll have comment as well, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Yaneski.
Yes, thank you. And just like everybody else here on the Horseshoes, giving you compliments about the excellent report, and I echo their comments as well. I sit on the hospital board of directors at the Grand River Hospital as a representative from council, and we just went through a strategic planning retreat just last month, and we're talking about patient safety first at hospitals and issues at the hospital. And I got to thinking about your action point number 20, where you talk about working with the government agencies and everybody else, and of course, the hospital is an institution that's part of the process. And I don't recall us ever touching base and working with the fire department from our policy, because I sit on the governance component of it, and in terms of safety and all that. And so I gather here from this statement, it says to engage and work with them, but I gather you've sort of been doing that all along over the years. Could you maybe elaborate on that, what involvement you have, or more direct involvement you have? We haven't had a major disaster at a hospital so far, so I assume things are working well. Maybe I just open that up as a general comment.
Yes, through the chair, in regards to, for the Grand River Hospital, we have done some work in the past, so we've always included individuals, so the emergency managers within the hospitals, both for St. Mary's as well as the Grand River Hospital, to be able to participate in any kind of emergency exercises. What we're trying to do now with the plan for emergency management is to actually do some education, not just around exercises, but also around the different functions and aspects of emergency management. An example of that would be the public information officer or the emergency information officer role. So recently we've been doing some education just around how do you deal with media during an actual emergency situation. So we're doing, it's a three-phase process that we're concentrating on, and we're including the hospitals as well. There is, I think it's Ann Roque for the Grand River Hospital, that we include, as well as the new individual at St. Mary's Hospital, Nicole, that we've also reached out to include. So that's where we're concentrating on, is really looking at the education to training and include them in that. Because there's always different types of emergencies that could occur, and it's how do you include them in that communication, in the actual training that we do moving forward.
Okay. Appreciate that. I know it's always a challenge with the hospitals, yeah?
I'd also like to add, through the chair, that in early 2015, we actually did have a significant water event at St. Mary's Hospital that my team was involved in.
Yeah, I remember that, the big flooding that you had in the basement there. Yeah.
So do I.
The other question I have doesn't quite deal with the report, but maybe it's buried in there somewhere, is that with all the reconstruction we have happening throughout the city and all the building of the LRT, that roads are closed here or there, varies from week to week, how you deal with responses, how you deal with working with the region. And now near the headquarters will be the new roundabouts that will be under construction starting now, really. And that'll last for a good portion of period of time for 2 roundabouts. And I know that intersection is always congested, and now you're going to have compounded with construction. How do you deal with the region and making sure all the roads are open?
Through the chair, so daily we get updated reports on construction and progress, as well as far as the traffic and the congestion and the changing landscape on our city streets with the LRT and single lanes on Charles and King Street near the hospital. One of our great allies is traffic preemption. So actually in the fire trucks themselves, they have a GPS signal that goes to a satellite that preempts the lights. So generally the traffic should clear prior to us reaching the intersection. Okay, sorry. Through the chair, further to that, then with the construction specifically around the LRT, more so than the new roundabout at Homer Watson, they have a fire life safety committee, as well as a development committee, as well as another construction committee that through our department, fire prevention, myself, and the training director all sit on. So we're aware of the updates and the progress and when they're going live and when they're going to be in a revenue generation stage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one question, one very basic question, Chief. With the height of the condos and high-rise buildings that are going up, particularly in the West End, if you hit a building at the Hub, for example, let's say it goes up to 25 stories, are you able to cope with that with your current equipment?
Through the chair, any type of high-rise fire above, I would say 6 stories, would automatically be done internally, right? So we're going to go 2 floors below the fire and then address it internally.
I didn't know that. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to ask some questions before the second round. I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a little bit here, and just because I've been receiving these kind of questions from some folks, and it's particular with downtown and the amount of recent fires we've had downtown. I know we've talked about this before, but can you just elaborate a little like to the committee and so to the benefit of our audience on what are we doing in particular with fire prevention in downtown?
So through the chair, starting in the fall of 2017, all of our fire prevention staff will be going into the restaurants, right? So doing inspections in the restaurants, and then 2018, we're moving that home fire safety program actually into the downtown core.
That's good. Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Fernandez.
Okay, so in reviewing this document, one of the things that struck me was the technology plan. And I had to look for a bit before I found that what CAD meant, so computer aid dispatch. I have to say I was kind of shocked that we are not moving along with technology like the rest of the city is. And it is a bit concerning, so either you can put my concerns aside or you can tell me, I mean, from the looks of the document, it looks like we've identified this as a gap. We identified where we need to go with this. So maybe we can enlighten the rest of us and the public on that.
Through the chair, you're absolutely correct. When I first came into the organization, I can tell you one of the biggest weaknesses, but now an opportunity, is the technology platforms. We were really antiquated. So we've had our staff, led by Demetria Resendez, move our technology platform forward. As you can see in Volume 2 of the plan, which you're highlighting right now, we have a comprehensive rollout program over the next 5 years that'll get us up to what I would consider a comfortable level with regards to public safety.
Okay, so is this an area where you expect that you may need to be hiring additional staff? I mean, you said it's all within, the whole plan is within the budget, but once you start rolling out some technology plans, you may find that there are gaps that you don't have in existing staff.
Through the chair, we just hired a fire IT manager and a systems specialist. We're going to be going through the interviews very, very shortly. And that's all part of the the IT strategy that's in front of you.
Okay. You also talk about cross-training and training and development. So that was page 69. And you know, you have a whole list of all the key functions, and you talk about 11 training committees. Can you help us understand a little bit more about what that means? And you've already identified that we're going to be using suppression staff to help with our fire prevention. That's one area that I would understand that you're doing some cross-training. Are there other areas?
Sorry, through the chair, could you restate that question? Just
Okay.
more of a question.
So on reading page 69, it talks a lot about training and development. And through reading that whole section, it talks, right on that same page, it talks about 11 training committees. So the chief has already identified that we're doing some, I believe, cross-training between suppression and prevention staff so they can get out there and do some more prevention education. Are there other areas that we're doing cross-training, and what are they? And what does 11 committees mean?
Right. Thank you for clarifying. So we originally had committee levels that did specialized rescue. They would focus their attention and training on a particular water rescue or high-angle rescue. What we've done is centralize them at headquarters. So we have a technical rescue team now. And then, so that was one of the reasons why the committee structure was no longer required. That also freed up the time from our outlying stations to be able to cross-train for these inspections and activities that impact our public education and fire prevention.
Okay. So one of the things that we discussed when I was there was about the training. And I had expressed concern to you that there is a perception that some of the firefighters are not passing their training exams or their tests. You know, it was just something I had heard, and so I put it out to you guys when we met individually. I believe you've probably looked into that a little bit further. I know, Deputy Chief Martin, you're a big supporter of training, and you're a real strong advocate of training at all different levels, even outside of the time that our firefighters are on the job. So that may be something that was perception and has now been changed.
Through the chair, are you referring to technical standards training, like firefighting training, or physical fitness training?
Physical fitness training.
Okay, so we don't actually have a mandatory physical test after they become hired. There's a process to becoming a firefighter. And then after that, we have a wellness program that encourages participation and does some evaluation, but non-punitive evaluation of the skill sets. And then we encourage and provide programming for anybody who may be in a challenging situation.
Okay, all right. I guess my time's up again. So maybe we'll have to have some more conversation offline, unless there are other questions.
No, there is no other questions. We will now go into comments. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I wanted to echo the sentiments of many of my fellow members of council, acknowledging full well that the fire division is, I think it's north of 25% of our total budget, the City of Kitchener. It's a very important one, and it's especially important that it's run efficiently. And by any metric that I can seem to find, especially I think the most notable one is the number of firefighters we have per capita. We are run very, very efficiently. And I think that's going to be a struggle going forward, even though that you did manage to keep it within budget, which was a fear of mine going into this whole process, that we are within budget. Meanwhile, we're maintaining the safety that our residents expect. So in terms of feedback, and it's covered in here, I really see the ability to maintain that sort of efficiency going forward is through technology. And like Councillor Gazzola, I think at some point in the future we need to look at some sort of mandatory direct detect. And right now the economics will not work at all because the costs are far too high, and there's the monitoring costs as well. But when I look at things like our LED street lighting initiative, I think that maybe there's an opportunity there to, at some point in the future, have a zero monthly cost type of internal program that actually reports any sort of fire on a go-forward basis for every single one of our 60,000 homes. I think that's very, very important. So I think that's the focus in terms of making sure that we keep our costs under control as much as possible on a go-forward basis, and possibly even enhance our fire response time. So I'm looking forward to seeing that develop over the coming years. But as a whole, I did want to say very clearly that I think this is a great document, again, that maintains resident safety at a reasonable cost. And on the higher scale, in my personal opinion, is I don't think the fire department hasn't been stronger in terms of the sentiment and the leadership. It's stronger today than it ever has been. So I'm very happy to support this document, and thank you for your work.
Mayor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I made some of my comments earlier. I certainly will be supporting this document as well. I think it is a tremendous piece of work, and I think it does reflect on the excellent leadership we have in our organization, as well as the excellent team of staff that we have working throughout all aspects of the fire department. I think it's important to remember, and was surprised actually at the last set of questions there, because in my 20 plus years as both councillor and now mayor, I've never heard anybody from the public or elsewhere question the training and capabilities of our staff. And my experience has been nothing short of the fact that we have an incredibly professional and dedicated professional fire service that goes out of their way to serve the residents of our community. And I want to go on record as noting that and thank the five of you, but in particular the chief and the deputy, on behalf of the entire department for the work that you do day in and day out, having participated in training exercises with you, having been on scene at fires, most recently at the one downtown, where it was in fact the collaboration of all emergency services, police and fire, and then eventually Red Cross and others, that really demonstrated how, when in fact you do have a system that works seamlessly between everybody, you actually minimize risk to life and property, and that is certainly what happened in that particular incident. We could have, I think, seen a fire that spread, in light of the construction of the buildings and how close they are to each other. I think we could have had a much different and worse situation than we ended up having, and because of the way that our staff approached it and how quickly it was called in, we were able to minimize those damages, and in fact get one of the businesses back up and running on Easter. Was it Good Friday or Easter Sunday? I can't remember. Good Friday. Get them up and running on Good Friday by dinner time, which was fantastic, and I know they certainly appreciated it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've also kind of made my comments through my questioning. I just wanted to be able to reiterate some. As our community grows and broadens outward, I think the choices are very clear before us. Either we will have to build new firehouse and hire more firefighters, or we can better manage the resources and assets we already have. And I think the master plan speaks in leveraging that. It's an approach of being more nimble and adaptive, and that's something that our citizens don't necessarily think that the governments are very good at. You're showing that that's not the case, and compliments again once more to the leadership team and the efforts and work that went into making this document.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
This is a very heavy document in terms of the information that is being shared and the strategic action plans. Having 35 action plans is quite an undertaking for you and for your team. And I'll be interested to see how you're able to roll all of that out over the next number of years. I mean, this is certainly not going to all happen in 1 year. We're talking about something that's going to happen over the next 5-10 years, I'm expecting. So I think what is really important here is, as we move forward through this plan, is what you've identified as more public awareness, more public education, and especially for residents at risk, like the students who are living in converted houses, are marginalized residents who may be living in rooming houses that are not, don't have smoke detectors, don't have carbon monoxide detectors. And you know what, ours went off last week, and I'll tell you, it was scary, because we didn't know what was going on. So we have to make sure that the more we're out there, our firefighters are out there, the more education we do, the better and safer our community is. But that said, our firefighter staff, I think, have been working so hard over the last number of years to build a really great team, to be a cross-trained staff, to be trained at all levels. And certainly my questions were not intended to suggest that our staff are not trained. I was only putting out something that I've heard, and I think it's always best to put out the fires, and no pun intended, when there are, well, maybe the pun is intended, put out rumors quickly, and to assure our residents that our staff are able, are trained properly, and continue to train throughout their service time. We have an awful lot to be thankful for when we look at our fire, because we know time and time again we are not the ones running into the fire. And that day of operations that you offered to us, Chief Rehill and Deputy Chief Martin and Deputy Chief Bob, I'm always going to, Gilmore, thank you. And any other staff that were there that day, that was such an educational day. It was it was challenging. It was darn challenging, and I was dog-tired, and it put a lot of, educated me in a lot of different ways. And as we continue to educate the public more and more, I think that that's really critical. But we are looking at a huge division within our city. We are budgeting a substantial amount of money to this division. And so it is with pride that I think you should be saying we are going to continue this level of service within the budget we have right now. And that should make not only us around council, but our residents feel really proud of our fire department and the work that you're doing, both in suppression and prevention and education and all of the levels that you do. So I thank you very much. I think I'm going to read this again, because even as I look through it while we were chatting, the maps here about response times, there is different staffing levels at different stations. All of those things I think are really important, and people need to understand that we're looking at this all the time. This is a moving document, this is a living document, and there's going to be times that we're going to need to be changing some things. So thanks again for all this work that you've done on this.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. Once again, thanks for this great report and all that went into it. There is cost to this, but I think what you do provides great value to our citizens. There's peace of mind. I hope I never see a fire truck on my street, but I know if I have to, things are going to be taken care of. I want to thank you, too, for inviting council to the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Services that you have, because it's those days when you really realize that as a firefighter, you never know what you're going to walk into every day at work. You are putting your lives at risk to save our lives. So for that, we thank you. The safety that you help educate us with, the community involvement through the charitable and community events that I see your members out at many events in the community that we get out to. So you're a big part of the community. I just want to say thanks for this great report, and we wish you the best with it. Look forward to the updates.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to start off by saying I'm one that is usually fairly skeptical when it comes to dealing with master plans and things like that, because I've seen so many master plans that are brought forward, and we never seem to know what they cost, and we never do have any plans for implementing them as to what it's going to cost our community. In this case, those questions have clearly been answered, and it is amazing, and I will watch as long as I can over the next 4 or 5 years to hopefully that you can accomplish all of these things. But because one of the concerns I had was there are a lot of great things, but usually to do a lot of these things it costs a lot of money, and to be able to say that your plans are that you can do all of these things, 35 of them currently, with living within the budget that you now have, and also to deal with the capital portions of it without having a negative impact on our customers. So it is truly a great document. Again, I'm not one that is great in handing out compliments to staff. I think our staff, I have no doubts that all our staff do an excellent job. They do the job that they were hired to do, and they do it within their work time. In this case, you do deserve a special compliment, because I think you've gone above and beyond really what often is expected of staff, and the results. There hasn't been one, and I knew this would be a slam dunk, that you've done such a good job that it's really hard to find anything in an excellent report that to be critical of. So it's the only thing I can say is thank you, Chief, and to all of your staff. I'm sure this is not only to your staff, but to all the other staff in the city that were involved with this, because it's taken a lot of people to come to this point. So I look forward. I think as it stands, we're in great hands, and I hope we can accomplish everything that we're planning to do. So thank you again.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I made a few comments in thanking you and in moving this document, because I do truly believe in it, and I'm really excited about the action items that you've created. I think it's going to make our community even greater than it is. You've already done some of that, and have really seen the amount of community outreach that has increased over the last number of years, and so thank you very much for that. And I actually see this as an increase in level of service with this document and the efforts that are going to be made through this document, and you're doing it with an existing budget. And I think that is huge, because a lot of the time there's more budget needed to increase the level of service, and I think you really truly are doing that for all the residents of Kitchener. This document also has a lot of great opportunities with revenue generation, with increased learning and education and training for the department. And so you've really covered every aspect that is required, and a thorough job has been done. You know, to say that 1,000 hours have been put into this document, it shows. It shows your passion, your dedication, and your leadership. It really shows in this document, and so I thank you for that. And I just want to put it out there that if there's any way that I can help get the message out with regards to Direct Detect or the Young Women's Program or any other program, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to assist to try and increase the awareness around some of those things. And so again, thank you very much for all your efforts and all that you do for our community.
Thank you. Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, thank you. Like everybody else, always congratulations on an excellent report. I certainly enjoyed reading it, and it's full of information, great action plans. Just want to also add that the work that you do in the community and the ceremonies that you have in recognition of the fallen firefighters, etc., with the open houses you have, I come out there to support you and attend those events, and appreciate your leadership on that. I also appreciated the leadership that you took a couple of years ago, and I'm just going to mention is that you had the invitation to all of council to attend the firefighters training at the training center, where you allowed us to be totally involved in using the jaws of life, or going into a building with fully clothed equipment and oxygen tanks and trying to put out a fire internally. That gives you a truly hands-on experience of what you have to go through that we don't usually see as the public, because we see it from the outside, but having that opportunity to experience that, I think, was a wonderful opportunity. So doing those things, even climbing up the fire ladder 6 stories high, it was also a wonderful experience. So I truly remember that all the time. So congratulations on taking that leadership, as well as with the document itself.
Thank you. There are no other comments. I'll make mine. First of all, this is a significant document, and I want to commend all of you for doing great work in bringing this document forward and the amount of hours you've committed to this. And I'm sure you don't get paid overtime for the amount of hours that you worked on this. So thank you for your time and commitment to that. What I like most about this document is I think it brings more efficient use of our services. It's forward thinking. The use of technology in the future is going to play an implemental role. And as you mentioned, some of the action items you already have completed, which I do appreciate. And again, thank you for that. One of the other things that I heard too was perceptions. I've heard nothing but great things about our staff. Professionalism has never been questioned from the point of view from the public that I've dealt with. In fact, you guys are everywhere from what I've been seeing, and everyone I ever come across, they're so grateful and appreciative that you're here and supporting the community events. So that is kudos to your team. One other thing too is no one likes to pay significant dollars for services when you look at just the dollar amount. And one of the challenges and one of the unfortunate things I've seen on my own street 3 times in the last 7 years is our staff come to my street and do what they do best. And I know those individuals and those families that are grateful that you are there. I'm pretty sure they're not concerned about the dollar cost of you saving their lives or helping them out. I think they're rather that you guys are trained well and serve the public well. But this document does control the costs, and that's why I think this is an excellent document, and thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Kelly Galloway Seelock. All those in favor? Recorded vote. Recorded vote has been called. It's now open. It's been voted unanimously. Thank you. Okay, We are now going to move on our second discussion item, and that's dealing with item number 12. And we do have some delegations for item number 12. I'm just seeing staff there's no presentation, so we will move towards the delegations. I just want to remind our delegations that pursuant to Council's procedural bylaw, that delegations are permitted to address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes. And so with that, I will call upon Gail Lopez. No Gail Lopez? Okay. The next delegate that we have is McKee L. Sharnubi. And you have a PowerPoint presentation, and that's been provided? Welcome.
Thank you.
Just wait till you're set up there, and you can go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is McKee L. Sharnubi. I'm a senior geostructural engineer here in Tri-City area. I'm here on behalf of the Waterloo Condominium Corporation. 464. We're located at 20 David Berger Drive, and I'm here to discuss some of the items in the report regarding the bike lane implementation on David Berger Drive. I should say I'm also a board member for the Waterloo Corporation, and I'm joined here by the other two board members, Helen and Omar. It's not clicking. There we go. It is. Okay, I think this whole thing started by the fact that the cars are speeding on David Berger Drive. David Berger Drive connects Ottawa Street with another residential area, which is Activa, if you're all familiar with this neighborhood. And I just say there are no lane dividers, and there are no speed signs. Just starting off with that. And but the report we got actually started recommending that we don't have or prohibit parking on both sides of the street at all times, and also putting in bike lanes. We've been talking about budget and cost previous meeting, and the cost for doing that is $20,000. And the report implies that by putting bike lanes, you would actually help reducing the speed of the cars, which was quite concerning for us. In February, the transportation staff contacted the long-term facility at the end of David Berger Drive, which is close to Activa. And if you look at the last bullet point there, it says the preference of the staff is to maintain on-street parking on one side with the bike lanes on both sides. However, the report came out saying prohibit parking on both sides, although the public feedback says we would like parking on one side at least. I'll talk about us, the board members representing the residents on 20 David Berger Drive. You've seen that picture here in the circle. This is where we live, and you have Ottawa Street up in the north of the picture. And you can see if you prohibit on-street parking on both sides, really we have nowhere to park 365 days, other than, I don't know, walking about half an hour to find, go park and go walk half an hour to find actually on-street parking. This is another picture that really shows you how far we are from any other residential street to be able to do that. The report implies if you put the bike lanes and reduce the speed, but if you look at other streets in the city, you will see on Greenbrook where it has speed signs. David Berger Drive doesn't have speed signs. It has lane dividers, that yellow line between the two lanes. David Berger Drive doesn't even have that. It also has speed bumps. David Berger Drive doesn't have speed bumps. None of these options have been recommended in the report. In fact, one of the other reports that was on the agenda today was the Dune South Drive, which actually recommends speed cushions, which is basically speed bumps that doesn't really affect emergency services. Greenbrook, which doesn't have bike lanes, connects Fisher Holman to Westmount. And if you look at Fisher Holman, it actually has bike lanes. So Greenbrook doesn't have bike lanes. It connects other major routes that have bike lanes. But if you look at David Baker Drive, which is the one we're talking about today, does not connect any major routes that have bike lanes. In fact, I've been living there since 2012, end of 2012. I have not seen one cyclist on our street. So I'm wondering what's the point of having bike lanes? We don't see cyclists, and the major routes don't have actually bike lanes. In fact, Ottawa Street at that point only has a sidewalk on one side. If you look at that street, if you actually remove parking on both sides, that would actually increase the speed. And we're trying to deal with the excessive speed on that street. The report says that the 85th percentile speed is 61 kilometers an hour. It's 20% more than the legal limit. Now, the legal limit is 50 if there's no sign. Now, it means that 15th percentile is above that 60. So if you actually remove parking on both sides, then you're actually going to increase that speed probably significantly. Not only that, putting bike lanes on a street that we know that 85th percentile exceeds 20% of the speed, of the allowable speed, that is actually not safe for the cyclists themselves. That is not safe for the kids who are 9 or 10-year-olds who are going to see a bike lane and going to go on that bike lane, while we have not yet controlled the excessive speed on that street. I'll finish off in here. So, in summary, bike lanes on a street with the speed, average speed, or 85th percentile, 20% higher than the speed limit, is actually a risk on the cyclists, and probably liability on the city itself, doing this before we're able to calm the traffic. Removal on street parking is expected to result in higher speed. We, I'm speaking again on behalf of the Waterloo Corporation here in 464, Condo Corporation 464, we unequivocally oppose to the removal of the on-street parking, which is what is recommended in the report. What we propose, alternatively, allow parking only on one side instead of the two sides which exist currently. At minimum, allow parking on one side from Ottawa to just a long-term care facility, or just there's a bridge before the long-term care facility. You can do that. But first, we need to control the speed. We need to deal with the actual problem, which is post speed signs that actually have a limit that is less than 50 kilometers an hour, that is maybe 40. Just paint some lanes, put lane dividers, so people actually, if they have lanes, they're actually going to drive slower. Put speed bumps or speed cushions. All this will help. There's a lot of schools in this area, and people really speed up. We don't believe that the biking lanes will reduce the speed. On the opposite, we think actually it might pose risks on cyclists. If you insist on putting bike lanes, we would propose one of two things. Put the bike lanes after the data shows that the speed on the street is within acceptable range. The data shows that the speed is acceptable range, so we don't have any accidents with cyclists. I think that's much worse than having accidents with cars in terms of the safety of the cyclists themselves. Again, if the committee insists on adopting this, we would propose, we're not sure if this is allowed or not, to a two-bike trail on one side of the street, but also still allow the parking on one side. So the main message here, number one, is we oppose to removing the on-street parking from both sides. We are asking unequivocally to at least allow it on one side, and bike lanes to be considered, to be reconsidered in this case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question for you.
Okay.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, were you able to, or anybody from the Condo Corporation able to attend the meeting on December 8th at WT Townsend, or have any of you been in contact with staff before this meeting?
With staff, letting them attend this meeting, yes, but attending that meeting, no. It was one meeting only, and none of us were able to attend.
Nobody in the whole Condo Corporation was able to attend?
We are 3 board members, and none of us was able to attend.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks for coming in and making an interesting, a couple of interesting points about what you see living on the street. So, are you opposed to A, the bike lanes, or B, the removal of all the on-street parking? Which is more important to you?
B.
The removal of the parking. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
B.
So
the cycling part is more of a, while it's supported, but it's more of a concern of adding it before we control the excessive speed on the street.
all right. When you showed a picture of your condo site,
Yep.
I think you had, I think I have a picture of it. Yeah. Do you not have any visitor parking on that?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And did you see the number of cars that were actually parked on the road? Did you see the graph in the report?
We did see the graph in the report. You will notice in that report that these cars, the counting was done anytime on the weekend. So yesterday I walked just to the long-term care facility, for example, and I counted the number of cars there, and there were about 20 cars parked on the street. So the counting was all done on the weekdays, but the traffic and the people parking on the on-site on the street is actually mostly on the not mostly, but also on the weekend.
So, but my understanding is that the majority of parking from the retirement home, that on-site parking is not always used, that there's a whole area in the back of that site that is not used. I mean, when you saw those 20 cars, you may not have been able to see, was the entire parking lot full to capacity?
So that is not in the report, the answer to your question, because I don't know if the report looked at that as well. But if I pull up here what the long-term care facility, in that meeting what the summary is, the default, yes, parking on both sides might be dangerous, but even if you have the no parking sign, people will park on the road in order to pick up mail, because there are mailboxes on the street. Staff and visitors use the on-street parking, which is, if removed, would result in the adjacent streets becoming more busy and crowded. So many families walk the streets to school, they park there because they want to go take these kids to school. There's not only the people on the long-term facility. So in addressing the long-term care, which we're not really necessarily presenting here, but these are actually their points. They're asking also to keep on-street parking for one side.
Okay. If we were to consider keeping on-street parking on your street, what side would you prefer it to be on? The resident? Because I noticed that there's a long stretch of green space along, yeah. So, well, actually on both sides. I can see why you have a speeding issue, because people feel when they've got all that open green space, it's like a racetrack for them.
It is, yeah.
Would you just want to have on-street parking before and after your building, your site?
Yeah, so one of the proposals we have, if you insist on prohibiting on both sides, so we're talking about, from Otto Street, and then if you pass our site, there is a bridge, and then there is a long-term care facility at the bottom. I don't know if there's a pointer here, probably wouldn't reach. So we would want it definitely maybe up to the bridge.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. We have no further questions for you.
Thank you. Also, I forgot to mention, sorry, I have a petition here from most of the residents that actually opened the door when we knocked at them, and all of them are asking to keep at least one side of the street parking.
Is that your copy, or do you have a copy if you give that?
I have a copy.
Okay, thank you. We'll have our clerk accept that and pass that along.
Thank you.
Councillor Galloway-Sealock, do you have questions for staff?
I do. Just a couple questions, and just to note, the report says the wrong word. It's actually in Ward 5. So my first question would be with regards to Ottawa Street. It's being looked at from a regional perspective. Is there bike lanes or multi-use paths planned for Ottawa Street?
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, thank you. Through you, the chair. I do not know details, but I can advise that when the region are reconstructing, they have been putting bicycle facilities on all their reconstructions, whether it's on-road bike lanes and an off-road trail or just off-road trails. But there will be some form of bike facilities provided on Ottawa Street.
I thought you might know the answer. I sit on the committee, and I'm pretty sure there is it's multi-use pathways that they're going to be putting in. My other question then is one of the ones that the delegation brought up with regards to possibly doing a multi-use trail on one side and on-street parking on one side. Was that given any consideration?
Thank you. Through the chair, we have worked up an estimate for a cost for an off-road multi-use trail. We're looking at approximately $210,000 per side. So if we wanted to do them on both sides, we're looking at approximately $420,000 to implement those.
So 210 to do it on one side then?
Correct.
No. Approximately. Yeah, that's the end, approximately.
I'm just being advised that that cost may double. Based on, this estimate was based on a 1.5 meter wide, and the multi-use trail we would develop would be 3 meters wide.
Is there any way we can look at that multi-use trail just in a small section so we can allow on-street parking? I do know that the parking on the street is a concern because there's nowhere else within, unless they have to cross Ottawa Street and go on Windflower Drive, for these residents to park if there is no more visitor parking, where at least at the long-term care facility, Peach Blossom is right across the street, so they can park on that street and still not have to walk that far. So is there any way we can look at veering people off onto a multi-use path, like past the bridge or past that new house that was just constructed, so it's a much smaller area?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The first thing that I would point out is there, in terms of the approved site plan for 20 David Berge Drive, there are 9 visitor parking spaces already assigned for that site, on site. Rather than installing a multi-use trail for a portion of the roadway, we would look at a design that would build a parking bay and keep the cycling facilities street level. So we have looked at a plan that would do that. Generally speaking, the cost to do it for around 10 parking spaces in that neighborhood, or in around 10 parking spaces, is about $100,000.
And that would be on the opposite side of David Berge than the condo complex. Would that be right? Would that be where you would do it? Because there's so many front-facing driveways on David Berge Drive.
We would likely do it adjacent to the site rather than directly across. There's a few less trees, so we'd have a lesser impact on the environment that way. So it would be between the development itself and that bridge that that they were talking about.
Is there the possibility, and I know I'm adding costs up right now, but any possibility of doing any bay parking along even just a couple spaces along the area of the long-term care? It's residential, or it's a retirement and also long-term care.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we looked at that as well. There is a location directly in front of the long-term care facility that we could provide a parking bay. We could accommodate about 4 spaces, and when we did a level C cost estimate, it was about $50,000 for those 4 spaces.
Okay. I would like to bring forward a recommendation at the appropriate time, if there's any other questions.
Okay, we do have some other questions. Councillor Fernandez?
I know that this came to the Cycling Advisory Committee, and there was strong support for this, but I'm not recollecting what other traffic calming measures we were planning on doing, or is this something that is yet to be decided for traffic calming?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, like a lot of similar reviews we've done over the past couple of years, What our intention is to implement the cycling facilities first as per recommended through the cycling master plan, follow that up with appropriate studies, and then determine and go back to the neighborhood with potential traffic calming measures, similar to what we did on Zeller Drive.
On which one?
Zeller Drive,
On Zeller
Councillor
Drive.
Schneider's ward, yes.
Okay. I think that needs to be clearly outlined to residents because, I mean, as the delegation mentioned, he hasn't seen any cyclists on David Burgee Drive, but one of the reasons that could be is that, you know, people don't perceive it as a cycling route. And if there's changes to Ottawa Street, there could be more cyclists using that once we have the bike lanes on that. That's kind of where we go with this, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, yes. Part of the rationale for installing cycling facilities is definitely to increase ridership.
Okay. When you're talking about the parking bay, and you're saying it's $50,000? Okay, can you help us understand what that entails?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what essentially we would do is remove the curb line for an extended length. We would then reinstall that curb line adjacent to the sidewalk, and that area that you would have typically seen with grass, a grass boulevard, is then replaced with asphalt, and it becomes the typical parking bay that you would see along a street. Now, keep in mind that $50,000 is just the construction cost and doesn't build in the annual operating cost that would be associated with the installation of those bays.
Okay, and the operating cost is what we're talking about is snow plowing then, right?
Correct.
Because we would have, I mean, that would definitely be a challenge for our snowplow operators to plow that area if there's cars parked there on a regular basis. On the one map on page 12-9, I notice what looks to be like a trail. It could be just a rough trail that comes out. Is that connected? Because I can't see what else. I mean, I think that's the wetland behind there. Is that sort of an unofficial path of least resistance kind of scenario here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not fully aware of the trail, but I believe so. I believe it's just an unofficial path that connects to the wetlands so that the neighborhood can get a closer view.
Okay. I'm just wondering if you know, this is something that we should be thinking about as a future natural trail if people are already using it, if that needs to be connected with our cycling lanes, our cycling trails.
It's something that we'll take back to our Parks and Trails group and keep it in mind for consideration.
Okay. Is there budget to do a parking bay?
Through the chair, yes, our capital budget for traffic calming accommodates an estimated amount for each project. It varies for each project, but we're confident that we could get that in within the budget provided.
Okay, so am I to understand that that is what the ward councillor is planning on putting forward? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. So I think that what I see, I want to ask staff to confirm, is what looks like a plan to add a mid-lane yellow line in the process of painting on the bike lane as well. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. When we go into assuming approval and going forward, we would mark the bike lanes, but we would also mark a center line on the roadway as well.
Okay. So if you had, another question is, would this street qualify within the range of a 40-kilometer school zone because it's so close to W.T. Townsend? And so therefore, could it be, that we respond to the residents' request to lower the speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour?
Through the chair, our practice through that report to implement 40-kilometer speed limits at school zones was purely for the frontages of schools or side yards of schools that actually had frontage onto the roadway in question. In this case, it would not be, it would not meet the requirements that the other schools where we put them in, because it's not directly on David Berge Drive.
Okay, so I know that we have such a long list of streets that are on our docket to do traffic calming studies, and now this one made it to the top of the list. You've done the traffic calming study, so do you see a potential need to reduce the speed limit?
Through the chair, as mentioned, this is the initial stage of the review where we're implementing the cycling facilities, and we will be monitoring the conditions before and after the implementation of any new measures.
Okay.
That would dictate whether we go to a full-scale traffic calming review following up. I will remind Council that falsely implemented speed limits are typically not adhered to and just contribute to more abuse. And a roadway such as this is not designed for a low speed like that, and accordingly, staff would not be recommending a reduced speed limit.
Okay, so I maybe read into the report wrong that it was recommended for a traffic calming review, but it didn't make it to the top of the list. Is that just it's because it's on here and it's on the cycling master plan that we are here today?
Through the chair, that's exactly it.
Okay.
When one of the listings is high on the priority listing, if it's
Yeah.
got cycling infrastructure planned, we'll proceed with that before we do the traffic calming.
For clarification, Councillor.
Just for clarification, it was on the traffic calming. It got to the top of the list. And that we moved it, but because it's on the bike list, the bike was looked at first.
Okay.
And then, if potential, then traffic calming after.
Okay, thank you. So my last question is just regarding the number of spots in this potential parking bay that will be considered. Will that satisfy the parking needs of the residents who are requesting to have at least parking remain on one side of the road?
Through the chair, as per our studies and indications of the on-street parking that is occurring, that we measured both weekdays and weekends, we would suggest that the bay we're proposing will accommodate the on-street parking. And I will also remind that the facility itself does provide visitor parking.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And no, just a little more clarification on the parking bay. I think that seems to be kind of a creative solution to address the parking shortfall there. For the budget cost, that's from this project itself or the overall speed calming budget item? So typically we do I think 3 or 4 a year, correct?
Through the chair, we have budget support for 3 reviews each year, which council approve.
Yeah.
Keep in mind the cycling infrastructure will be paid through our cycling capital budget.
Right. But the cost for the additional cost for the implementing the parking bays will come from the component that was already put aside for this project, not the overall 3.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so that just makes sense to solve the concerns of the area residents. So that's good. Just from a better understanding, just in case I try to push for something in my award for a parking bay, how do you for snow clearing? Is there an operational issue with you have cars there that's parked as well, or how do you address that?
Through the chair, it's the same challenge we have with on-street parking. We have the overnight parking bylaw through the winter, which would apply within these parking bays. So it would not be permitted to park overnight in these parking bays. So the real impact to operations would be having to do an extra run based on the fact they'd come through, would have to go through the parking bay to clear, and then would have to return to clear the road that they had to avoid to clear the parking bay. So that's where the extra cost would come in, and just the extra time for the plows themselves to clear the snow.
And that's not a significant extra time, right?
I am not the expert on that, but I would suggest it's not, no.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davey?
Thank you, and I have to jump in and say I'm somewhat surprised at where this is going. Can I start by asking, what's our annual budget for traffic calming?
Through the chair, approximately $165,000 per year.
And how much is this parking bay again?
Approximately $50,000 for one or $100,000 for another. It depends on which ones we're talking, and I'll just remind council, we have parking demands by this facility and also by the long care facility down closer to Activa.
Okay, and can staff remind me what the city's policy is in building new parking spots for private businesses?
The provision of on-street parking is done so as a convenience for the businesses and residents in the area. It's not a requirement or an expectation, and accordingly, all developments, when they are approved and built, are required to provide their own visitor parking.
Right, so if this facility wanted more parking, that would be their own responsibility, typically on their own private property, to find parking. So that's rhetorical.
One could argue that, yeah.
Is there any concern from staff about setting a precedent here that every time we put bike lanes on a street, we're going to be on the hook for providing new parking for the private sector?
Through the chair, we've gone through a number of reviews, and I would suggest this is, I think, the first time that we've dealt specifically with this. Each one's different in its own. Obviously, I think there's got to be concern any time a decision is made to set the precedent. But at the same time, I'm not concerned that this is going to be the case on the majority of our reviews going forward.
Mr. Reedman, care to add more?
Through the chair, I do have some concern of adding parking in this situation because there are two facilities that both have on-site visitor parking that's allocated, through their development. One alternative could be implement the bike lanes, monitor parking in the area to see how it is, and then during the second phase of the traffic calming, look to see if an alternative solution is needed at that point in time.
Sorry, could you repeat that last part again?
So since this is a two-phase process, the bike lanes would be first, and then the traffic calming review would go second. An alternative solution could be implement the bike lanes now, monitor traffic in the area and see utilization and uptake, and then as part of the traffic calming process, look at that time to see if solutions are needed.
Okay. And to be clear then, this, again, I'm not sure the motion going forward, but the proposal would be if there was parking bays put in, it would come out of the traffic calming budget.
Through the chair, that's our original thinking based on the fact it's been necessitated by our work, yes.
Okay.
We might venture into the cycling budget for that as well.
Okay, and that budget, what's the annual budget for that? It's around $450,000 a year or something like that?
Closer to $300,000.
Okay, so again, we're looking at a significant portion of that budget. I have concerns with this. I'll have comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, I just want to totally understand this. The reason we're doing this is to satisfy the request of the cycling master plan? Is that
Through
it?
the chair, that's the initial aspect of this review, yes.
Yeah, there's been no great request from cyclists other than the cycling committee?
Through the chair, no, this is just typically implementing the council-approved cycling master plan with the theory to try to promote and encourage cycling.
So how do we determine whether doing this is a success? Is there any factors we have that we? From what I'm understanding, there currently are not a great number of cyclists on that stretch of the road. So how do we measure success on this?
Through the chair, with all these reviews, we are measuring the cycling usage in advance and after the measures are put in. So it does give staff the ability to assess the impacts of these implementations.
Are there sidewalks all along here on both sides of the road?
Through the chair, yes, there is.
Yes.
Okay, finally, are those sidewalks heavily used, or do we know that?
They're used.
What do you mean they're used? Are they heavily?
I've seen them used. People use them.
Okay. Did we consider this, the residents' request of parking on one side? Was that considered in your review?
Through the chair, the physical roadway width does not allow us to implement both bike lanes on both directions as well as parking on one side of the roadway. It only allows us to provide the traffic lanes and the cycling lanes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have no further questions, so I'll finish with one question. Mr. Carmichael, with regards to our budget, what happens to the dollars that are in the budget if they're not used to fully for the year?
Through the chair, excellent question. As mentioned earlier, each review, there's no set costs for each review. It all depends on the measures going in. And over the years we've been doing this, some are much lower than the anticipated cost and some are much higher. What we do is we provide council with information each year as you assess the capital budget, and you folks are considering the amount in there, what we have going forward, what work we still have approved, and from there, the council makes the decision whether they want to dig into that capital budget amount or not, which has happened on a number of occasions over the years.
Okay. In the past, have we done this before in the past for other calming measures? Because I know myself, I think I requested this before and it wasn't favorable.
By doing this, are you referring to adding a parking bay?
That's correct.
No, I would suggest we have not.
Okay. Councillor Galloway, Seelock, you want to put forward your recommendation?
I'll just put forward my motion. So it's going to essentially, paragraph 2 is the same. I wrote it out in case anyone wants to see it. That parking be prohibited on both sides of David Berge Drive between Ottawa Street and Activa, with the exception of a parking bay for 10 spaces in close proximity of 20 David Berge Drive. I'm only proposing to do the parking bay on that one because Peach Blossom Crescent is right across from the long-term care, so there is, within a very short walking distance, the ability to park and still get to that residence. Whereas 20 David Berge Drive, if you know the area, there's really nowhere else for anybody to park because of it's really close to Ottawa Street. There's no other side streets that are close enough to it unless they cross over Ottawa Street and park in a different residential area. So I think it's appropriate in this. And I would also see it not just being used for the people of 20 David Berge Drive, but there's also people who come and visit that area because of the wetlands. It's heavily used by photographers who come and like to bird watch, and there would be an opportunity for them to park on the street as well, whereas again they wouldn't have anywhere else to park. I understand that this is a different circumstance. I wouldn't normally recommend something like this, except for the fact of where this street intersects. It also is very high. It needs to be very high and looked at from a traffic calming perspective because the police are often there, and it doesn't deter people's speed. People speed on that street. I'm down that street very, very regularly. It's easy to speed on that street. I hear quite frequently about the animals that don't make it across from one area of the wetland to the other, which is a huge concern for the community. And so traffic calming needs to happen. I understand staff's philosophy, which may be different than the delegations, that we need to implement cycling lanes first and then do traffic calming after. But I do see parking as being an issue. And I know it may not be exactly what the Condo Corporation of 20 David Berge want, but it may be the best that we can do and that we can offer to you if this is approved. So again, I just want to reiterate that it's not just for 20 David Berge Drive. There are general members of the public who would utilize this parking as well to enjoy the wetlands that are there and some of the informal trails that kind of go down into the wetlands for them to use. So I would encourage everyone to support this recommendation to move it forward because I do believe we are in a unique circumstance.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, can you put the recommendation up on the screen, please? Okay, it's just easier for me. Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Sorry, out of that amended motion, I do have a question to staff. If there's need for a parking area for that natural wetland area, why have we not considered doing something there in the past? Is it because parking on-street parking was always available?
Through the chair, that's just that the parking is already permitted currently, and with the implementation of the cycling facilities, we're proposing to prohibit parking. So that's why it's been enjoyed in the past already.
Okay, so on another page, sorry, this has just brought up a couple more questions for me. On page 12-5, there is what looks like a parking area. I don't know what this cross street is that comes as a T intersection. What is that? Looks like paved area there.
Through the chair, I do not have a plan on 12-5. Can you help me out what you're referring to?
On 12-5, there's on the...
It's for maintenance access.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you know what? I've got two reports. So it's on page 12-11 on the individual report that we got.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. My understanding that's a maintenance access.
And does that get used for parking?
Through the chair, I hope not. It wouldn't be the intention of it, no.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I will support the recommendation, but not the amendment, just simply because, well, there's a few reasons, honestly. Number one, I'm deeply worried about the precedent-setting nature of what we're doing with traffic calming. We already heard one councillor push for if everyone wants to do it potentially in his ward, and I can guarantee you every single time we have a cycling conflict with parking, if we do this now, members of council are going to bring forward that we build in a parking bay. Now, what we're talking about at a minimum is a third of our entire traffic calming budget for a year, and possibly more than half of our traffic calming budget for a year for parking. Parking is not traffic calming. If there is a need for parking for bird watching or whatever it is, in my opinion, in that area, that's fine. It gets put forward to staff and it comes through the budget process for an additional $50,000 or $100,000 ad. But when I have residents who I've told, hey, guess what? You have to wait, 6, 7, 8 years because you're so far down the list in terms of traffic calming. That's fine. A lot of them understand that there's a weighted goal for where that comes on down the list. But parking in this case is not traffic calming. When it goes to the traffic calming review, it's supposed to be for things like speed humps and road pinching. It's not for additional parking. And I can't tell my residents that have been waiting for traffic calming for years that this is an appropriate spend. So again, to support cycling, there's a cost. Then there's some political cost in terms of the parking. You make the decision based on that. But in terms of where we're going here, I think it's dangerous. I don't think it's ever been done before, at least in my term of council, where we've built parking spaces for, again, in my opinion, largely for the private sector. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the sense of caution that Councillor Davey is expressing, and I share it as well. And I agree. I think in our term of council or our time on council, I don't recall this being proposed or having the details of what the costs related or how operationally what the challenges are. I think it is a different way of looking at things, so I don't think it's something we should be afraid of. We should get the right information, know what the costs are, and it has to be not just for this spot. If other parts of the city where we're doing speed calming and parking is being taken off that street where the same residents are accustomed to and they have the same challenges of parking, well then it has to be fair and equitable and balanced in those spots as well. So that is a likely scenario that it is precedent setting, but. So my proposal on this one is I think I'm a little hesitant to vote on it because even though I support in principle, I'd like to get some more information on what the operations costs are and knowing full well that there won't be any operational challenges as well. Because again, we're taking away the boulevard and that's how I'm seeing it. So where will the snow be banked? So then there's some snow removal issues too. If staff on hand are able to really explicitly explain the details, great. But if we're not ready yet, I would like to defer the amendment part, or at least for the where it speaks of the parking bays to, when it comes back to council, and hopefully staff will have the detail on exactly the full cost and again, how will be managed through our operations for snow clearing. And at that point, then we can base our opinions accordingly.
Sure.
I just wanted to speak to the bays and the snow removal and operations. Well, I'm not a snowplow operator. We do have other bays in Ward 5 that are cleared on a city street, and so the plow operator would likely be doing the same route and would already have experience doing that. And along this stretch, it would be city-cleared sidewalk. Because it's not resident facing, so it would be our city operations that would be removing the snow from that area. So I just wanted to put that out that it's.
No, I completely appreciate that, Councillor Gal. We see you, and then I think it might be easier here because you have some of those parking bays already in your area. But again, my comment is if it's happening here and if there's challenges in other parts of the ward, well, then this is a solution that we have to look there as well. And so we need to really know what the costs are related, and if we're going to be looking elsewhere as well. So we need to have that information on hand.
Okay, thank you. I will make my comments because there is no further comments. I have an issue with this recommendation, and I know myself, I've requested similar bays in at least 2 times in my ward, and they weren't part of the discussion because of cost and everything else. And to be quite frank, I think this is, as Councillor Davey put it, this is not a traffic calming measure. This is parking. And I think if we're going to go down this route, I think we need to do a policy change before we do this. And I prefer to defer this item or before I will accept this, because I think we need to investigate this further before we make this move. So with that, you want to have, you're asking for a deferral? Okay, here I'll put you in, Councillor Singh. Where are you? Here we go. Councillor Singh, can you?
Just defer the council meeting so that staff can answer on the questions that have already been raised.
Okay, so it's referred to council meeting then, basically? Sure. Okay. Well, we have Councillor Gazzola.
I just want to ask you, what is the purpose of deferring it?
Well,
to what end?
I'm deferring or referring to Councillor Gazzola to get more information on the operational aspects of building the parking boulevards, the costs, and how it would be managed. That's where I struggle to vote on the amendment, not on the staff recommendation. I'm supportive of the staff recommendation, but based on the amendment, I have difficulty voting as it states. Because some more information is needed.
Why don't you allow a vote to take place, and then you can see what the thinking is around the table, and it still has to come back for ratification in a week's time. I don't see what deferring it just sort of puts everything to the back burner without.
It doesn't really. It has to be ratified, Councillor Zola, and Council anyways. So I think we're all supportive of the recommendation. I think there's slight changes being recommended, and we can have that information on Council.
Okay. There's no other further questions. So it's referral till next week. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Or when's our next meeting? 2 weeks, in 2 weeks' time. So we'll be up to discussing this item again in 2 weeks' time, on Monday. Okay, thank you. Yes, I think they understood that. Mr. Reedman, oh, you got that, Mr. Reedman? Okay. So that's that item. We are now going to deal with item number 13, dealing with the Dune South Drive traffic calming review. And it's been moved by Councillor Fernandez. Do you have questions, Councillor Fernandez? Okay. We have no questions with that. You want to make your comments?
If there are no questions?
There are no questions.
Okay. So this has been a real ongoing process, both for Dune South and Dune Mills. At the neighborhood meeting for the Dune Mills traffic calming, there was a fair bit of discussion around what is happening on Dunes South, and there seemed to be a general amount of support for what staff is doing. I know that former Regional Councillor Jean Halbum had asked a question with relation to a signage, and Mr. Carmichael, you can confirm that you were going to repair that or replace that sign. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. Yes, I've confirmed that left turn prohibition is in fact in our bylaw, and our staff will arrange for the sign to be reposted.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on this, please.
Okay, we'll have a recorded vote. There are no further questions, so call to vote. Daniel, you can skip that. Okay, that's been carried unanimously. We now will deal with item number 14, dealing with the development incentives for affordable housing implementation. Do we have a presentation? No, there's no presentation. So with that, we will go straight to questions for staff. Councillor Etherington. Just hold on a second. Okay. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. My first question on the issue of private developers taking advantage of these incentive benefits. Brandon, does your fourth recommendation on page 1 of the report allow that to happen once the region moves on incentives?
Through the chair, maybe I'd suggest Lauren's here from our office as well, and she can provide some information, and then if needed, I'll supplement.
Okay. Go ahead, Lauren.
Through the chair, the proposed council policies do allow that the eligibility criteria would be for a not-for-profit housing provider, and also that private developments could partner with a not-for-profit housing provider, provided that 30% of the units would be affordable. Now, from the planning perspective, incentives for all private development is a positive thing, though one of the major considerations is actually that we require a mechanism to safeguard that those units stay and remain affordable over time. So a community improvement plan or CIP would be the appropriate tool to do that, which does take some time and resources to implement. That is actually why we have the fourth recommendation in the report. We know that the region is considering some incentives for development, incentives for affordable housing, and one of those options could be a community improvement plan. We also know from the previous council strategy session in February that that there's a definite impact or a maximum impact that can be achieved if we have joint incentives at the municipal and at the regional level. And so in order to ensure that those agreements can stay affordable over time for new affordable housing units, that fourth recommendation actually gives Kitchener the authority to proceed with the region on a future joint community improvement plan, and that is actually a legislative requirement of the Planning Act.
Just to follow on that, thank you. If there was such a partnership developed, I guess perhaps you can tell me what would be the advantage of that. I presume the non-profit group would manage the rents on the apartments and make certain in future years that they stayed affordable. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
And could you explain to me, is part of the reason for not involving private developers at this stage is that if we wait for the region, it could take 9 months to a year and perhaps lose out on some of the money that is available or will be available for affordable housing?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. One of the key takeaways from the council strategy session last time was that there's a desire to have some incentives available to come into place as soon as possible. We do understand that the region is currently going through a process to award the next round of regional funding to new affordable housing providers. And by having some of these tools in place right now, we know that these funded projects could actually take advantage of these development incentives and produce an immediate win.
Thank you. My last question. In discussions leading up to this, discussions at this council, there's been some suggestion that we could be at risk of doing more than our share in the region, more than Waterloo or Cambridge. But could you tell me, is it not in fact true that we are behind Cambridge and Waterloo on incentives and development of affordable housing?
Through the chair, the City of Cambridge does have a robust program that they just put in place over the last 2 years. And it would be helpful for the City of Kitchener to take some of these first steps to catch up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you referenced City of Cambridge, and how about Waterloo? How does Waterloo fare?
Through the chair, we understand that Waterloo's had some successes recently with using the density bonusing tool as a mechanism to provide some funding towards affordable housing. And so the other thought process going behind our recommendation number 4 is that if we can work with the region, engage them, that likely a program that would happen at the regional level would also then draw in the other municipalities.
Can you explain more on how density bonusing works? And in density bonusing for the City of Waterloo, are they working only with not-for-profit, or it's generally for anyone that is willing to build units that are below market?
Through the chair, I don't have all the details of exactly how Waterloo is doing the program of density bonusing, because they are doing it through a site-specific development application way. And so each site that they're doing it is not following the exact same policy or program. So the ones that they've had so far, though, are usually the developer of a site on that site gets more height or density in exchange for they've provided some financial amount towards the provision of affordable housing in other locations.
I'm not overly critical of what's before us, but I do think when looking at a policy change such as this, it is helpful to have comparable in our our neighboring cities, because again, the fear and the concern, I think it's valid amongst many that have raised it, that we don't want to be the only ones bearing the weight. It has to be fair and balanced throughout the region. So us assessing what the program that we're about to implement in comparison to the other cities, it's easier to see in a whatever point form. But regardless, I digress. The other thing I want to touch base on. So the comments leading up, I think mine for sure were such that I didn't want for affordable housing units to for us to be building housing blocks. That's all affordable housing. My understanding or my assessment in managing this was that it has to be dispersed throughout the community. Anyone that is needing that assistance for below market rates, they need to have that fairness of having flexibility, living any parts of the city, having access to the amenities and spaces throughout city, rather than be defined to a certain area because that's it's a community partner or a not-for-profit group, and they have wherever their lands are, wherever they operate. So I see more of a kind of a pigeonhole in this approach. So why are we deviating from? It wasn't just mine. I think others said the same, that they wanted sharing with the private sector and finding a solution, as opposed to us just trying to do it on our own or working with not-for-profits only.
Mr. Sloan?
Through the chair, I think we would suggest those are fair comments. I think throughout the process of considering affordable housing over the years, staff share some similar thoughts in terms of an equal distribution in various locations throughout our municipality and throughout the region. What we are attempting to do in the policies that we'd like to put immediately in place is that we're attempting to go down the route of what you've suggested. So the eligibility criteria that we've included within these policies for the incentives is that a private developer could partner with someone, and as long as 30% of the units are affordable, then the whole development would qualify for those incentives. And
30 is a bit high, though. When you're working with the private sector and when the motivation incentive is profit, we can encourage to be a partner, but for them to drastically change their business model, 30% is a driving force, right? So I don't see a wider dispersion of those affordable units. Again, I still see concentration if you're looking at 30% in one building.
Through the chair, again, of course, it's up to committee and council to discuss and debate. If there's a different number that you're looking at, you can discuss that number. I think what we're also need to keep in mind is that in the future, there is going to be additional tools, such as inclusionary zoning, where we can get at more details and have more legislative authority to look at that spread and distribution, whether it's within a building or even within an area that we would want to target. We don't have those tools yet. This is kind of a pseudo way to get us towards that.
No, I appreciate that. And my only concern is I want us to start the process on the right road. That's the only thing. I had another question. Do you want me to ring back in?
Please.
Okay.
Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and thank you to staff for bringing the report forward, because it is something that I believe we need to tackle. One question, though, because I think it's important that we're clear on what your responses were. When you were talking earlier about sort of the comparators between Waterloo and Cambridge, you were merely talking about the level of incentives that they may have in place right now in comparison to Kitchener, because I don't want it in some way to be misconstrued that somehow they're ahead of the game in terms of affordable housing. I mean, the numbers, I think, speak for themselves throughout the region, and the city of Kitchener has historically been a leader in terms of the share of affordable housing in relation to the overall regional population that has been in Kitchener. Cambridge, I think, has been fairly proportional as well. And then the others sort of fall out from there. And I just want to make sure we're not talking about where things are at, but talking about the level of incentives that's being considered.
Yeah. Through the chair, I can confirm that we're speaking to Cambridge's suite of programs in terms of stock of affordable housing. Kitchener does more than its share.
Okay, thank you for that. The second piece that I want to touch on then as we move forward, and I look at the budget that excuse me, that's included in the recommendation. And when I think about the amount of affordable housing that might be coming forward, or even the, it doesn't take long in any sort of affordable housing project to eat up $30,000. I'm wondering how we came up with that money, and are we looking to limit it to that, or what is staff's thinking on that?
Through the chair, the budget of $30,000 annually was derived from the previous staff report in the council strategy session in February. It basically took a look at a number of other not-for-profit affordable housing projects that took place over a 10-year period and came up with the average amount per year. So it is possible that in some years the cost would be higher than that $30,000, and in some years it would be lower, or in some years we might not receive any applications. Though this current staff report does highlight that over the course of 10 years, it should even out, provided that the previous trends do continue.
Okay, so to be clear though, when it comes to the DC part, you're really looking at not the waiving of DCs, but simply the cost of carrying the fees from a timing perspective, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I realize this may be premature because the provincial budget only came out on Thursday, but have staff had any opportunity to take a look at what was announced in Thursday's budget around affordable housing and the possibility of the waiving of DC fees through some provincial funding, and how that might impact anything what's being suggested here today, if at all?
Through the chair, these are welcome news from the province, and any additional information, tools, funding, incentives, or opportunities that come are in addition to what staff are recommending today. So we will keep monitoring how these unfold.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. So I just have a question around the mention of a 450-meter proximity to a transit corridor. Are we defining the transit corridor? Can you remind me as anything along the LRT route or an iExpress route?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct, and it could also include future iExpress routes too. I do have a map available to show what areas that is. If it is helpful, I could pass that on to clerk.
That's fine.
Okay.
What I want to understand, though, is if staff has considered the fact that along the LRT route, especially, property values are higher than other parts of the city, and so a nonprofit's ability to afford a property in order to create non-affordable housing units might be inhibited by this restriction. And can you speak to that?
Through the chair, all the more reason to have these incentives then, to help provide at least some way to level the field a little bit. Also, there are some nonprofit that may already actually own land within that area. And so then it gives them the ability to even expand on their property, subject to other items. And also the item about adding in the private developer that could partner with someone. And so that helps in that instance too. So if that land is held by a private developer, or they have more of a means to acquire land to build a development, they could partner with somebody in those areas to do it.
Okay. And I'm not really clear on how far ahead Grand River Transit plans their new iExpress routes, but if we had an area that, was seeing a high increase in development, I'm wondering what comes first, the development or the iExpress route. And I think, of course, development is first, but again, I think that we should be watching for this limitation and seeing whether or not we need to ease up on that restriction of the 450 meters from the official transit corridors in order to make it more possible in the future. I'm fine with leaving it for now, but I think that it's something to watch as we look at ever-increasing property values along the LRT route. And Chair, at the appropriate time, I'm not sure if someone's already indicated that they're going to move this. I'm very happy to move the recommendation when at the appropriate time.
Just sorry, through the chair, just to confirm for Councillor Marsh, the planned and the existing transit corridors, they're on an approved map. So they're approved map from the region's official plan and the city's official plan, and so they include even future iExpress corridors. So even like Fisher Hallman and the extension of that, Ottawa Street, Lackner, Victoria Street. So yeah, the plan is there.
Go ahead.
Well, then this is a no-brainer. This makes this a no-brainer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. One of the things that I was, when it looked under implications and financial impact, one of the things we talk about is additional staff time required. I guess that would really be dependent on the applications that we would be receiving. Is that correct?
Through the chair, what we're recommending in terms of putting these policies as drafted and putting this in place right now, we don't see a major significant impact on existing resources. I mean, we are going to have to update some forms and some application piece, but that's pretty small compared to the need that's out there for doing this.
Okay.
I think what we're flagging is when we get into doing bigger things like a community improvement plan, then you're going to need someone to administer that program and manage it, and you start to get into more heavy resource requirements.
Okay. Could you tell us how many, if any, nonprofits have approached us about doing non-for-profit development and affordable housing?
Yes, I can tell you that. Kitchener Housing has.
Okay, that's one. Thank you. Staff maybe have some other answers.
Through the chair, I'm not quite sure the time frame of the question as to over the last
10
years,
6 months.
5 years, 6 months.
Last year to 6 months.
We receive some questions, discussion, meeting with some, including Kitchener Housing, but also many go to the region of Waterloo, since they are the actual housing provider. So the region usually fields most of the inquiries. We work closely with regional housing, and so we're aware of several, and it usually peaks in time frames where they are having a funding call, and so there's several right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I had expected, because I had heard from one in particular. How is this going to affect our DC account? Because every time we do exemptions, my understanding is that means that money isn't going into our development charges account, which is money that we would be using for the whole list of things that we use for development charges. That's like an account, right?
So through the chair, but maybe Mr. Chapman might want to add to my response, but essentially we are not exempting or waiving DCs. We're just postponing the timing that it has to be paid. So if there's an impact on cost, perhaps someone from finance can comment on that. Perhaps as we move into exploring recommendation 4, we might tackle that or not, and we do feel it's best tackled during the time of a DC background study, but we're not recommending an exemption at this time.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And I misspoke. I should have said that they're deferred, but maybe finance could give us a better understanding if it will have an immediate impact, because we would be, I mean, some of this land could be redeveloped land, so we wouldn't know if that we were going to get DC charges on maybe brownfields or redevelopment.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, we wouldn't anticipate there to be a material impact. All we're talking about is a delay, typically of a number of months, in payment from what would have been building permit, which will now be occupancy. And so all we're really out is essentially the investment income on those funds over that time frame. And so on most projects, that would be measured in thousands of dollars, and that would not be material to the DC Reserve overall.
Okay, and that's kind of a perfect lead into my my question in why not more? I mean, 30% is only 33 units in a 100-unit building of affordable housing. I mean, the rest of them could be, an additional 10, 15, 20% increase in affordable in cost to make up for the 33 affordable units. That would be my concern. Is there a developer or a builder is going to try and offset it one way or another?
Mr. Chapman?
So I want to make it clear that although the financial impact is not significant, the impact to the developer of delaying the payment is very substantial, and it's not primarily a monetary issue. What we understand is that financing for not-for-profit home builders is a very sensitive issue, and they're able to obtain substantial financing at occupancy, but not at building permit issuance. And so the fact that they can defer the timing of what is a substantial payment to occupancy makes their financing much simpler. And so although there's not a substantial cost to us to permit that, there is some risk in doing it, but not a substantial cost. It's a substantial benefit to the home builder.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps it would be helpful to just also clarify that a not-for-profit through these measures can actually do a project 100%. It's only if a private sector wants to partner with a not-for-profit to take advantage of the programs before we actually have a CIP in place that they would have a minimum of 30%. That's the way that it is written currently.
Okay, so as long as you understand, I'm strongly in support of this. I maybe asked my question incorrectly, but I'm saying if a developer or builder is partnering with a non-for-profit, then wouldn't it be great if they could do 40 or 50%? I mean, you're saying 30% is the minimum.
It's a minimum, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I think by now I've had most of my concerns answered, but I just want to clarify this. From what I understand, this really isn't costing us anything. It's just a delay of when we collect our monies, and on the other hand, it's a big advantage to the not-for-profit organization. Are there any risks to the city for this? For this part that we're looking at implementing immediately?
So I'll speak to the DC deferral issue. I think there is a small risk that we have a greater challenge in enforcing the collection of the DC at occupancy. There is no legislative mechanism by which we can force the payment of it. And the report outlines that the amounts can be added to taxes if they're in default, but we can't enforce that as a priority lien. And so that's the additional risk that we take on. In our experience, that risk has been a fairly low one, but council should be mindful of that.
But you said they can be added to taxes?
It can be added to taxes, but not collected with priority lien status, so it doesn't enjoy the same priority the other amounts that are added to taxes would enjoy.
Does it? Like when we have utility bills and that put in our taxes, do they also not have the same priority? Is it something similar to that? Or?
I'd have to go back and confirm. I believe the utility bills do have priority lien status, and so they are collected first. In the case of a tax sale, in this case, it would be like an unsecured debt, and so it would not have that priority.
Okay, so excuse me. So basically, as it stands now, the only cost we're looking at is this loss of interest for a short period of time. There's some possibility of a risk. Are there any other costs that we are incurring?
Mr. May?
To be clear, the staff report is recommending two different incentives. So everything you've just talked about, which costs us nothing, is related to the DCs. There's also a waiving of development and planning fees, and there is a cost to that, identified at, I believe, $30,000.
So that's what the $30,000
Yes.
is? I'm sorry, it's the waiving of...
planning and development fees for affordable housing related projects.
Okay. So, and that's dependent on how many units go forward, I gather.
And applications received,
Yeah.
yes.
So going further down the road, when we deal with the region on this, what are some of our costs that we would be incurring then?
Yeah, so through the chair, one is we would actually look at finding ways to involve the private sector to a larger extent. So the numbers that we have in the current report would need to be revisited. Also, depending on if the region does participate in some or all of these programs, it could impact the amount of take-up. On some of these fees, the regional portion is much larger than the local portion. So that'll also influence the numerics that we will be providing to you when we come forward, and if we do, with some information on going ahead with the CIP. And of course, a bigger financial consideration would be should the region decide to explore the exemption of development charges, we'd come back to council and ask the question if council wants to do likewise, and we would have to calculate and come forward with some information for council at that time.
Okay, using the CIP, really just the benefit of it is that it allows us to make sure that it stays as supported. Is that on my?
That's the fire alarm. I suggest we evacuate.
This is just the warning. This is the standby. This is the standby one, not the
There's no message yet. You can just relax until they give us a message.
Attention, attention, attention. Fire emergency parking level 2. Evacuate parking level 2 and parking level 1 immediately. Floor wardens commence code red actions.
We're good.
Attention, attention, attention. Fire emergency parking level 2. Evacuate parking level 2 and parking level 1 immediately. Floor wardens commence code red actions.
Okay.
Attention, attention. Fire emergency parking level 2. Evacuate parking level 2 and parking level 1 immediately. Floor wardens commence code red actions.
So we evacuate. All right, we'll take a recess until this is done. Okay, I ask everyone to take their chairs, please, so we can move ahead with the meeting. We'll start in a minute. John, I'll give you 2 minutes because I think you were like under a minute. You had your answer? Okay. Okay, our next question is Councillor Singh. Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
So we're going to the second round, right?
Oh yeah, I have a question. Before you wanted to, with the 30%, just knowing what I've been dealing with on the KHI board, with the 30% has to be development. I mean, in regards to affordable housing, I know in some of the models that we are even looking at, that would be even a huge challenge for them to achieve. So I'm hoping that there's some flexibility in that number.
Through the chair, we've been discussing this topic even as staff, and if members of council want to discuss that percentage, that's fine. I think 20% probably would be a minimum that could work.
Okay. Councillor Singh, go ahead.
Yeah, you kind of pretty much went where I was kind of leading to, especially with your comments about KHI and your understanding of how that organization works. I think that just speaks to why I think this number may not be the right balance to start off with. I see this obviously just the starting point. I think there's a lot of work that's going to be added on top of this, especially seeing what the province does, seeing how the federal government incentives and also especially from the province, how that helps us as well. But we need to have more adoption from the private sector. That's how I see it, to have the right type of dispersion. My apologies, tongue twister. Mr. Chair, would it be? I had a question, but my questions have been answered through other members of council. I would want to put that small amendment in changing the a minimum from 30% to the 20%, as has been acknowledged by staff. Do you want that written out? It's just that paragraph on 4.1B, just 30 to 20.
It's just a 10, just a number change.
Attention, please. It is now safe to return. We have reverted to code green status. This is an all clear.
Okay. I'm sure that will go one more time.
Please. It is now safe to return. We have reverted to code green status. This is an all clear. Attention, please. It is now safe to return. We have reverted to code green status. This is an all clear.
Okay. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, just a couple of additional quick questions. I think I know the answer to one. The amount of money that the feds put up was it about 12 billion across Canada? Can someone answer that? 11.2. And the province is even, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. The province is very fuzzy. I'm still having trouble determining how much from the province. Mr. Mayor, do you happen to know on that?
Mayor Verbanek?
I would say I'm not clear on exactly how much because, as you know, there's been a number of programs that were in place prior to this year's budget, and then some additional stuff which was announced. So what all that amounts to in total, I'm not aware, but I'm sure we could get you that information.
Okay. And my last question to our planners, I'm aware of some private development interest in what we're doing here. Have you heard of any interest from private developers? I know from sitting on Kitchener Housing, that one has already been mentioned, but are you aware of any others?
Through the chair, yes, we're aware of others that are interested in this from private development side, that they're even looking at a model of partnering with a non-for-profit organization. And so we've had some discussions, yes.
Terrific.
And we've received some feedback that what's proposed may be of benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola?
I just want to ask staff their comments of going from 30 to 20%. Did you answer that before? If you did, I'll put it. Otherwise, what impact does that have?
Through the chair, if council wishes to try and be a little bit more flexible for having a private development step forward to partner with somebody, and by being more flexible, starting out with a minimum of 20% instead of 30% as part of the criteria, as a measure to start to encourage and induce this form of development, we're all supportive for that.
Do you see it as a big difference? Why didn't you mention 20 when you did the report?
Through the chair, we had to start somewhere, and we discussed during the break that we had, and 20% seems reasonable from our perspective. I don't think we have as staff any red flags about that at all.
All right, so then it's just a minor adjustment then. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions to staff. Do we have comments or anything? They're all rolling in. Okay. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chet. It sounds positive around this council chamber suburb, but before asking councillors to support this report, because I certainly will, I'd like to point out a few housing stats. We all know the one about 3,000 names on the local regional list waiting for affordable housing. But those are names that represent families of adults and children, and hundreds of those names are senior citizens. Some of those people have been waiting on that list for up to 6 years for decent, affordable shelter. Many of those people are Kitchener seniors, as I said, who, according to reports about our aging population, will, over the next decade, not many of them will have not enough pension income to cover housing, food, health, transportation, and other costs. And in my opinion, they will need help. And so do it's about 1,600 people who need supportive housing where they get shelter plus agency support. Looking at that situation, as has already been brought up, we've been promised cash for affordable housing from both levels of higher government, at least $12 billion, and it will be available to municipalities ready to go with affordable housing projects. We've got several available projects that I know of, including the one from Kitchener Housing we mentioned. But in my opinion, we have to move fast and not wait another 9 months for a regional council to play catch-up and provide a wider array of incentives. A few other things, just considering the millions we currently spend on health, justice, social services for those who need housing, it's a proven fact that we can slash those costs, taxpayer costs, by investing in the provision of decent, affordable housing. I'd like to address another concern about shutting out private developers, and this has already been discussed as well. I would like to see many of these team efforts, developers teaming up with non-profit groups to get these projects underway and maintain low rents on the percentage of units. So we've finally got a chance to move on affordable housing with senior levels of government, but again, we have to move quickly. So please please approve the report, and let's continue to give caring consideration to hundreds of Kitchener families and seniors, particularly those seniors who need the support of this council, as well as the support of our regional councillors. And in my opinion, as I've already said, we can't afford to wait.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
I'm surprised I'm so fast. I normally shy away from things that don't come under our mandate, and this is one that doesn't. But on the other hand, it would be wonderful to help out with everything. And when we can help out our residents, our constituents, by getting to areas like this where there's relatively little, if any, cost to the city. It is a place that really the senior governments, and including in the senior governments our own region, which is at a higher level, should get into. And they talk about it, they keep talking about it. Hopefully they will, there are elections coming up. Hopefully they will start to put the money, where their mouth is. In the meantime, I think it's an excellent opportunity to start doing something positive and helping a lot of the people in our community. It's a good. There's no question about it. It's a good thing to help out our community whenever we can, and especially when there's not a great cost to the rest of the community. It would be whatever we can do to get the private sector more involved down the road. That's bound to be a good thing, and the more we can do with that, the better. I'm not concerned about what our share is compared to the rest of the region and all of that, the other cities. I mean, there are members around this horseshoe that want to keep talking, and rightfully so, how progressive this community is. And to be progressive, you have to do a lot of things. You have to be leaders in things. And I think by doing this, we become a leader in this. And hopefully, maybe through our actions, we can at least start off by getting the region more involved and faster. So I think this is a good this is a win-win for our community, and I can totally support where we're going.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When I look at this topic for affordable housing, I don't see it as a problem. Pause on that one, because I see it as a way of planning our city. It's not something that we're doing for a select few. It's for us to plan and grow our city in the right way. As we see prosperity and growth, we need to ensure that is well dispersed and fair and equitable to all our citizens. And I think policies such as these help to plan our city accordingly. And that's why I don't see any issues with is it the right type of division of different orders of government based on their mandate. I think this is our mandate to ensure that our city grows in a balanced way. And some of the concerns I had initially addressed with ensuring that we have the right type of approach that seeks out the maximum partnership opportunities, because we can't do it alone. It has to be a community effort, like much of what we do, and this too has to be a community effort amongst the public sector, the not-for-profit, and the private sector to ensure that it's done the right way, and as well as at the least cost as well. And I think that would be the approach. I think these are great recommendations and ideas that staff have put forward, and I think it's a really good starting point, and it will only grow from here. Let's support this strongly.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by this report and the fact that staff has been able to find ways that we can move forward on encouraging affordable housing in our community. I have in the past heard from a developer, and one of the things that they did ask me was, can we look at these kind of incentives and ways of helping them create affordable housing within our community. I also like the fact that we're choosing the transit route. 450 meters along a transit route is very, very walkable. Not only do most of these people not have safe and affordable housing, but many of them need to have transit so that they can get to their appointments and do their shopping and get to work and get to school. So I'm very supportive, although the one thing I did forget to ask, and that's because we had the fire alarm and then I stepped out to get a tea, was the length of time for review. So on page 14-8, we are talking about 5 years before review. I know this is time for comments, but maybe offline you can give me an understanding why we chose 5 years as opposed to 3 years. There may be some other logical reason for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing a unanimous vote by council in support on this.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh, or do you want to go a little later since you're moving it? Okay, that's fine. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Ioannidis. I too will be supporting the motion that's before us. The reality is, when it comes to issues of affordable housing, there are responsibilities that arguably lie with all 4 orders of government. And as we know, in Ontario, it's the regional order of government that is responsible to take the funding that comes from the province and the federal government and to implement it. But having said that, if truly we are an inclusive community And if we're going to tackle some of our greatest challenges as a community, those challenges are best tackled when we work collaboratively together amongst all four orders. I believe that this is certainly an important step in the right direction, an evolution of the kinds of things that the City of Kitchener has done over its history, going as far back as the creation of Kitchener Housing several decades ago. Going forward, I think it's extremely important that we continue to be nimble, that we are continually evaluating the kinds of incentives we have in place and look at how they can best come together with whatever the programs are going to look like that are going to be part of the funding that the federal government announced. We don't know those details. We know the quantum. We know that it's back-end weighted, but it's really going to be important to see what those details look like, and in particular what they look like. And it seems the first phase of that is going to be focused around supportive housing, and that's really going to involve bringing other players to the table as well, folks like the LHINs, the hospitals, the mental health care workers, and others, because having those right supports in place to go with a good affordable housing unit is just as important as the house itself is, if we're going to work towards seeing these individuals have a better quality of life going forward. So I am hopeful that Council will support this unanimously. I'd ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to seeing how this moves us one step closer towards working with our other partners to reduce that housing waiting list, which we know at the region is over 3,000 families throughout the region. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davey, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to support this. I definitely think it's a step in the right direction, although I think it's important to note that in the current market that we're seeing, it feels like the inbox is getting a lot bigger than the outbox, because at this point, housing prices, you have to go back, you're up 30% from just a year ago for all people that are trying to afford a home in this community. So I do think this is a step in the right direction, but as has been mentioned by several other members of council, we need other levels of government to definitely chip in more in the situation, because it's only going to get worse. And I mean, the reality is we've done very well in terms of our local economy and our economic development, but a casualty of that has been the Toronto influence in housing prices. So this is a situation that is only getting worse, and we have to do everything that's within our power to try and make sure that people have a safe place to live.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
First of all, I want to thank staff for bringing forward this report quickly, as requested by Council. It's a terrific report. As real estate prices rise, as others have mentioned, the cost of renting also rises, and it's vital that our community respond to the need for more affordable housing. These new Council policies and the direction to partner with the region on any future CIP process is really an important step in the right direction. So I'm very pleased to move this recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. And I will make my comments. I don't know where to begin with this, to be honest with you. I think this is a really big issue. And I think it's a good sign that we're seeing all levels of government participating in this, and I think it needs to be all levels to work together to really tackle this issue. When you arbitrarily put a border around a community, you set policies that create red tape. You have environmental issues. You have heritage issues. These are all related, and we make those decisions every day. These are all attributed to our rising costs. Just want to make that clear. What staff is proposing here, And it's no fault of their own. I think it's good, but really, it's a drop in the bucket. It's probably less than that on how we're going to tackle this situation. But it is a positive step, and no doubt it's moving forward. But we are nowhere near to solve this issue, and quite frankly, I'm well, the way the market is moving with the third, like as Councillor Singh, as Councillor Davey mentioned, 30%. This is going to be obsolete in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time. What we're proposing, we may even have to go back to the drawing board, to be honest. So I will happily support this, but I think we're nowhere near getting where we need to be. I mean, it is a step forward. And with that, call a vote. All those in favor? Record a vote. And that's carried unanimously. And that concludes our Community Infrastructure Service Committee for May 1st, 2017. Thank you. Mayor Verbanovich.
Thank you. I'll call the special council meeting to order. We have 2 items on the agenda. Somebody want to move them? Moved by Councillor Singh, second by Councillor Fernandez. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we will, someone want to move bylaws for 3 readings? Councillor Davey, Councillor Schneider. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Marsh, Councillor Singh. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Especially a limited cost to us. Pardon? Especially a limited cost to us, right? Yeah, cost effectively. There could be some mixed issues that might
Yeah, there's no level of that detail. I'm just trying to figure out what arguments they will advance. Thanks, Len.
Yeah, you're welcome.